All right, thanks everyone. I really appreciate you being here. I'll get started in just a second. Just a forewarning, you might hear my dogs barking because it sounds like my neighbor's decided to shoot his gun in for hunting season. Such is life in rural Pennsylvania, so forgive me if you hear them bark. They'll be fine. So, the purpose of this live stream is a lot of the videos I've been doing have been about a lot of what John Solomon's reporting. And I think particularly one story that he's been discussing is what I would consider to be the biggest story in the country right now. And unfortunately, I don't hear anyone talking about it. So I'll start with what that story is. Then I'll start with what Solomon's responding to. And we'll go point by point through Solomon. He has 28 points. So this video is going to be a while. It's probably going to be at least 2 hours. And I'm not going to go through every single piece of evidence that he has, but I will make sure that I show you that it's there, that you'll be able to access it yourself, and we'll go through a lot of it. So the things that Solomon's reporting, if we look at this in the grand scheme of things, I've been arguing that Republicans have made a mistake the entire way through these impeachment hearings, and that mistake was focusing all their efforts on corruption of the whistleblower and the fact that there wasn't a quid pro quo. Those are fine arguments to make, but the best argument to make of Trump's phone call and Trump requesting investigations into Ukrainian election interference, Burisma, and Biden, the best argument to make is there should be investigations into all of that. And that's what the reporting of John Solomon has led to. Solomon has been smeared. No one deals with specifics of his reporting. They just constantly say, oh, he's a hack. He talked or worked with Rudy Giuliani, and he's biased, and he's only an opinion writer, and everyone's debunked everything he says. You constantly heard the witnesses such as Vindman, Hill, Yovanovitch, others say that over and over again. All these conspiracy theories that Rudy was pointing and the reporter he was working with, or they would specifically say John Solomon's name. He's a hack, or we've debunked everything he said. Nothing he said was right. But they never talk about the specifics of what he said at all. Or they'll say, he talked to Lysenko and Lysenko's corrupt and he's a hack and everything Lysenko said was a lie. But they don't talk about the specifics of what Lysenko said. And there's been media smears. There's been over 100 articles written about how terrible John Solomon is. Now, just a little background on him. He formerly worked with the Washington Post. He's won awards for his reporting. He wasn't smeared as terrible or horrible until he started reporting on corruption in the intel agents, which turned out to be true. All of the reporting he did, or the vast majority of it. We now know that one of the intel agents in the FBI is actually being looked at, if you saw my live stream, for previous to this one, for falsifying evidence to spy on people connected to Trump. He was right on all of that, and it turns out he was right in all this Ukrainian stuff. The media aren't a free press anymore. That's why they're going after one of his own. Instead of saying, my God, this guy's on to... I mean, just take this story, for example. Can you believe that an independent investigation, the IG, ruled that James Comey violated department protocol over and over and was criminally referred? That would be one of the biggest stories that a journalist could ever cover. I've never heard of the director of the FBI being indicted and impugned in such a way. But instead, the media attacked people like John Solomon that brought this information up. And then an independent report, the IG report, proved that that was true. So they're attacking him, and Solomon, in my opinion, is fantastic. I'm not going to say he's perfect or anything like that. I won't believe something that he doesn't source just because he says it. But to me, he is a real journalist standing in a sea of thousands of corrupt propagandists that are attacking him. They have nothing to say to the facts that he's sourcing outside evidence to prove, and so they merely attack his character. That's it. That's what it's all about. So what I think, and I'll just give a brief nutshell of what I think the biggest thing that's come out of Solomon's reporting is, and it's as follows. We have an admission through the testimony of George Kent, the Democrats' first witness that they called in this public impeachment hearings. In his closed-door testimony, George Kent admitted that when Lysenko said, I was pressured by people at State Department to drop investigations, George Kent admits, yes, that is correct. That was true. And what were those investigations? Into Obama-linked people and into stopping investigations into 2016 election interference from Ukraine. This is the biggest story right now in the country, and no one except me and John Solomon has talked about. What does this mean? The American people were told for 3 years that the most important thing we could do is investigate foreign election interference. No stone must be left unturned. It was tantamount to an attack on our country. We had to go into lawyers' offices with guns and raid them in the middle of the night. Charge them for crimes that had nothing to do with it from 10 years ago. We had to arrest Russian trolls that were posting on Facebook Go, or posting on Pokemon Go. On and on we heard how important it was. Now to find out that the same State Department officials that are testifying against Trump actually were pressuring the Ukraine to not investigate and not cooperate with investigations into Ukrainian election interference to help Hillary, it shows you exactly what's going on. That is the biggest story that no one is talking about right now. Now, I'm going to bring up the Solomon article here, and wait, how do I want to do this? I'll shrink my fat head. And then we'll bring up the Solomon article. So I'm going to be bouncing back and forth from the article to the live stream, so it'll look a little weird, but just to make sure that I'm still connected and all that good stuff. So I'm just going to start reading from the top. When we get to the actual points that Solomon's making, he has 28 of them here, then we'll talk about each one as he goes. But it's titled, Responding to Lieutenant Colonel Vindman About My Ukraine Columns with Facts. He says, and I'll just get through this part quick, I honor and applaud Lieutenant Colonel Alex Vindman's service to the country. He's a hero. I respect his decision to testify in impeachment proceedings. I suspect neither his service nor his testimony was easy. But I also know the liberties that Lieutenant Colonel Vindman fought on the battlefield to permit for a free and honest debate in America. One that can't be muted by the color of uniform or the crushing power of the state. So I want to exercise my right to debate Lieutenant Colonel Vindman about the testimony he gave about me. You see, under oath to Congress, he asserted that all factual elements in my columns at the Hill about Ukraine were false, except maybe my grammar. Here are his exact words. I think all of the key elements were false, Vindman testified. Representative Zeldin pressed him about what he meant. Just so I understand, what do you mean when you say key elements are referring to everything John Solomon stated or just some of it? And this is Vindman. Quote, all the elements I just laid out for you. The criticisms of corruption were false. Were there more items in there, frankly, Congressman? I don't recall. I haven't looked at the article in quite some time. But you know, his grammar might have been right. Such testimony has been injurious to my reputation, one earned during 30 years of impactful reporting for news organizations that included the Associated Press, Washington Post, Washington Times, and Daily Beast and Newsweek. And so, Lieutenant Colonel Vindman, here are the 28 primary factual elements in my Ukraine columns, complete with attribution and links to sourcing. Please tell me, if any, which are factually wrong. Okay, so this is the start of it. He's trying to be polite to Vindman, says, I respect you for your service, etc., things like that. But he's basically saying, look, and it wasn't just Vindman. Fiona Hill did this, Yovanovitch did it, Holmes did it. Everyone said, oh, this reporting, it was all conspiracy theory, it's all been debunked. That's what the media's been saying. That's what the Democrats have been saying. They've all been attacking him. Instead of talking about any specifics, they just say he's debunked. Now, I also have been talking a lot about Solomon's articles on my videos and other places, and I've got pushback. A lot of that pushback is quite simply, everything Solomon says is wrong, he's a hack. I'll get to that specifically, how that's ridiculous. I've also heard things such as, he's an opinion writer, so nothing he says matters, or everything he presents is just hearsay. None of that is true. Yes, it's true that he has been deemed an opinion writer, but by the same token, that doesn't mean if he's actually quoting or citing testimony or direct interviews or documents, that those are his opinions. His opinions would be what he draws from that facts. But the facts are the facts. And he's actually providing sources to back up his facts. Now, as I get into this, just full disclosure, my computer's not the greatest in the world. It would have been nice to pull up the 40 things he's going to use, the 40 attributions he's going to use to defend all of him at once. I'm not going to be able to do that, so I'm going to have to bring them up one at a time, so there might be a little loading time issues. So let's dive in. Fact 1. Hunter Biden was hired in May 2014 by Burisma Holdings, a Ukrainian natural gas company, at a time when his father, Joe Biden, was vice president and overseeing U.S.-Ukraine policy. Here is the announcement. I don't have to bring that up. You know it's true, but he cites it. Hunter Biden's hiring came just a few short weeks after Joe Biden urged Ukraine to expand natural gas production and used Americans to help. You can read his comments to the Ukraine Prime Minister here. Hunter Biden's firm began receiving payments totaling $166,000, his monthly payments. You could read those here. You've seen the articles about how much money Hunter Biden was getting. So, let's bring up the remarks by Vice President Biden. Today, the Prime Minister and I talked to the work before us. We discussed the most acute problem, the most acute facing Ukrainian people, the ongoing threat of the country's sovereignty. I'll say it again, Ukraine's an important country. The United States supports a strong, united Ukraine. with productive and peaceful relationships. That's a goal we share. No nation should threaten its troops by amassing borders. We call on Russians to pull back these forces. Your government's taken important steps to uphold what we reached in the Geneva Connection. We've heard a lot from Russian officials in the past day. These are all Biden's comments. In here, he starts talking about the importance of working with people in the United States on their energy production. That's admitted. We discussed efforts to strengthen Ukraine's economy. Last week, the United States government signed a bill proposed by the administration for a $1 billion loan guarantee. The United States has been the driving force behind the IMF. I expect the IMF package to be specialized. The Prime Minister and I spoke about energy. An American team is currently in the region working with Ukraine and its neighbors to increase Ukraine's short-term energy. In other words, Solomon is correct. Hunter gets hired by Burisma. At the same time, Joe Biden's announcing loan guarantees and announcing having Americans work in the energy sector in the Ukraine. That's fact one. Undisputed. No one's disputed fact one. There are independent sources to back up fact one. Hunter Biden got hired by Burisma. Joe Biden's at the same time talking about guaranteeing loan guarantees to the Ukraine and having Americans help with their energy. And Hunter Biden's getting paid tons of money by Burisma. Not in dispute. Now, is Vindman disputing? He said all of his facts are wrong. There's fact one, that's right. And we'll see what that leads to later. Now, that fact alone should be troubling. If the vice president's son is on a corrupt company, a gas company in Ukraine that's getting a bunch of money, and Biden's in charge and suggesting giving loan packages and having Americans work with Ukrainians to get money, that's very troubling. Moving on, fact two. Burisma was under investigation by British authorities for corruption and soon came under investigation by Ukrainian authorities. Let's bring up both the links, just so we can't say that he's lying. Well, that one just talks about how the investigation was concluded on June 2018. And here's the New York Times article that talks specifically about, in this article, it talks specifically getting quotes from Biden's camp as they acknowledge Hunter Biden, a former Washington lobbyist, joined the Burisma board in 2014. The entire article is talking about Britain's Serious Fraud Office, independent agency for Verchevsky, as well as Burisma's holdings, and it's talking about the prosecutors investigating. Everybody knows about this article. This is from the New York Times, December 8, 2015. Now, what's the importance of this? What's Solomon trying to say? Now that we've figured out that the facts aren't in dispute, that there actually was an investigation led by someone named Shokin, according to the New York Times article, they talked to Biden's camp. Biden's camp said, Hunter's his own person. We have nothing to do with this. This proves that despite what you hear from the mainstream media and other places, Joe Biden was aware there was an active investigation into Burisma. He knew that the person in charge of that investigation was a man named Shokin. This is all reported in the New York Times. Not disputed, backed up by evidence. So far, so good, right? Okay? So that's fact two. Remember, Vindman and then said everything Solomon said is a big conspiracy theory. This is just laying the groundwork right now with these original facts. Hunter Biden, do you see how careful he's being? No one really disputes Hunter Biden was hired by Burisma, right? No one really disputes that Joe Biden was the point man talking about loans and stuff with Ukraine. But he's being so careful because he's a good journalist. He's saying, here are literally in order the way the facts go. Here is the sources backing up these claims. Yes, Hunter got hired by Burisma. Here's the facts. Yes, there was an investigation into Burisma. Here's the fact. Yes, Shokin was the guy's name. Yes, the Bidens were aware of this. Fact three. Vice President Joe Biden and his office were alerted by a December 2015 New York Times article that Shokin's office was investigating Burisma and Hunter Biden's role in the company was undercovering his father's anti-corruption efforts. That's the New York Times article I just showed you. They actually seek to talk to Joe Biden's team for response, and Joe Biden's team literally, in fact, just so I'm not accused of misrepresenting, because that's what they do to Solomon, so there's no reason they wouldn't do it to me. Did you see the title of the article, by the way? From the New York Times. I'm sure it's a right-wing rag, though, right? Joe Biden, his son, and the case against a Ukrainian oligarch. Mr. Chow at the Ukrainian Policy Center says, now you look at the Hunter Biden situation, and on one hand, you can credit the father for sending the anti-corruption effort, he said. But I think, unfortunately, it sends the message that a lot of foreign countries want to believe about America, that we were hypocritical about these issues. Kate Bedingfield, a spokeswoman for the vice president, said Hunter Biden's business dealings had no impact on his father's position. Hunter Biden is a private citizen and a lawyer, she said. The vice president does not endorse any particular company. He has no involvement with this company. The vice president has pushed aggressively for years, both publicly with the groups, the U.S.-Ukraine Business Forum, and privately in meetings with Ukraine leaders, for Ukraine to make every single effort to investigate and prosecute corruption in accordance with the rule of law. So you see, they knew. Biden's people actually spoke to the New York Times when asked about this. He knew that Shokin's office was investigating this. He knew there was an ongoing investigation. Okay. Now, is the New York Times wrong? Are they lying? Are they conspiracy theorists as well? Or can we say Vindman was incorrect again? All of these witnesses were incorrect again. So what do we know so far? We know that Biden's getting paid a buttload of money by Burisma. We know that at the same time we know Hunter Biden's getting paid. At the same time, we know Joe Biden's the point man saying Americans will help with their energy. We're going to give them loans. We know that there's an investigation being led in Britain and in the Ukraine, and the one in Ukraine is being led by Shokin. We know Vice President Biden was aware of this. All of that's proven. Number 4, the Biden-Burisma issue created the appearance of a conflict of interest, especially for State Department officials. I especially refer you to state official George Kent testimony here. Here's the testimony. He testified he viewed Burisma as corrupt and the Bidens as creating a perception of conflict of interest. His concerns both caused him in contact the vice president's office and to block a project that the state's USAID agency was planning with Burisma in 2016. In addition, Yovanovitch testified she, too, saw the Biden's-Burisma connection as creating an appearance of conflict of interest. Her testimony's here. I'm not going to go through their whole testimony. But trust me, that did happen. They both said that. No one's disputing it. George Kent said it. Yovanovitch said it. In fact, I've been arguing for months. One of the things I find suspicious, all of the articles that are defending Biden's quid pro quo to force this prosecutor to be fired, every single one of them will say, well, yes, at the time it did have the appearance of a conflict of interest for Hunter to be on the board of Burisma while Joe was calling Burisma's owners corrupt. That did have the appearance of a conflict of interest. And the point I made about this is constantly what the media does. When scandals are occurring at the time, they say nothing's happened, scandal-free, as long as it's from the Democrat or the establishment. And then years later, they'll admit, yeah, that looked pretty shady, but I'll trust us, it's all cool now. Just like with Bill Clinton. They'd smear credible rape accusations like Juanita Broaddrick. They didn't mind James Carville, who was working for the Clinton camp, saying, that's what you get when you drag a $20 bill through a trailer park, and making fun of someone who was alleging the president of rape. Now, afterwards, they say, maybe we should have taken that more seriously. So everyone, even these articles defending Biden, even George Kent, even Yovanovitch, all of them are saying there was at least an appearance of a conflict of interest. Right? Okay, so Vindman's wrong about that. Fact number 5. The Obama White House invited Shokin's prosecutorial team to Washington for meetings in January 2006 to discuss their anti-corruption investigations. You could read about it here. Also, here is the official agenda for that meeting in Ukraine and English. Let's bring it up. Let's just bring up the actual call. That'll be easiest. You see who they're meeting with? Eric Charmella. Does that sound familiar? Huh, isn't that odd? That's the whistleblower, for those of you who don't know. Or at least who he's alleged to be. Let me see what... Sorry, I'm just reading some comments there, so we'll keep going. So the team that's supposed to be, I just pulled up the article, the team that's supposed to be prosecuting, Shokin's team, that was their itinerary, who they're supposed to meet. They're supposed to meet a bunch of people in Obama's State Department, a bunch of people in Obama's Intel Department. One of them was the whistleblower, Charamella. Now, doesn't that seem odd that the whistleblower would all of a sudden have a problem with Trump wanting to investigate wrongdoings of the previous administration involving Burisma, when he was one of the people on Ukraine's own itinerary? I just brought it up. Bring it up again here. The prosecutor's training program, that's the prosecutors meeting under Shokin. Who are they meeting with? Charamella, National Security Council, all of these other people in the Obama administration. Raymond Hassler, head of the Anti-Corruption Division of the U.S. Department of Justice. Shokin's team, the one that they're calling prosecutor, or corrupt, the prosecutor who we know was in charge of the investigation into Burisma. They got invited to discuss anti-corruption measures. Charamella was one of the people there. We have official documents. This isn't hearsay. That's what I'm told. This isn't, oh, it's just an opinion piece. It's the actual document. Fact 6. The Ukraine investigation of Hunter Biden's employer, Burisma Holdings, escalated in February 2016 when Shokin's office raided the home of company owner Zlochevsky and seized his property. Here is the announcement of the court-approved raid. Now, this might come as shocking to you if you've been following this, because you were told, and I was told, that one of the reasons it was okay for Biden to force the firing of Shokin was Shokin hadn't done anything for ages on the Burisma case. Nothing. The case had been stale for years. I hear that over and over. It'd been stale for years. Shokin's a liar. Shokin's corrupt. Solomon's a liar. We know that the case was dead and buried. Court seizes property of ex-minister Zlochevsky in Ukraine. The movable and movable property of former minister Zlochevsky in Ukraine has been seized, according to the Prosecutor General's office. That would be Shokin. The PGO filed a petition to court to arrest the property of ex-minister of the Ukraine Deputy Secretary Zlochevsky, from which arrest was withdrawn, and other property he actually uses, namely a housing estate with total of etc. The PGO clarifies that the court satisfied the petition on February 2nd, 2016. That's quotes from the courts. Ukrainian courts. That's not hearsay. That's not Shokin's opinion. That's not Solomon as an opinion journalist just saying something, right? Now, we were told over and over, this one is very important. We were told over and over again, Shokin was corrupt. He wasn't doing anything into the investigation of Burisma. This is February 2016. Now, when's Biden going to make his announcement? I believe it's in March of 2016. The next month. And the defense of that has been, Shokin didn't do anything for years. He was just sitting on the investigation. That's not true. He seized the property of Zlochevsky the month before. Biden and all of them said he isn't doing anything. As backed up by official documentation. Not hearsay. Fact 7. Shokin was making plans in February 2016 to interview Hunter Biden as part of his investigation. You can read his interview with me here, his sworn deposition here, and his interview with ABC News here. And I'll just bring this up. I'm not going to go through it. You've already seen his sworn deposition. Shokin maintained his suspicion that the vice president's motives, accusing Biden of promoting his dismissal for personal reasons. He was acting as an individual, Shokin testified to ABC. Biden campaign spokesman rejected the premise of Shokin. But Shokin talks here about how he was specifically going to interview Hunter Biden. Now, and he also says in the court document that's also listed here. Now, I understand the answer that's given is Shokin's corrupt. Of course, he's going to say that. I will fully admit on Fact 7, we are talking about just Shokin saying, I was going to investigate him. So I get it. If you think Shokin's corrupt, you're going to dismiss fact 7. That's fine. But we do know from independent sources, fact 6 is true, that Shokin did raid and seize the property of Zlochevsky the month before he was forced to be fired. And we do, for what it's worth, have Shokin's sworn testimony that he actually was going to go after Hunter Biden. And that he was forced out because of that. So even if you don't believe facts, and that's what people want to do, they look at one specific thing. If they could discredit a source, then they'll say, oh, we discredit this source, that's the end of everything, end of the game. Up, we don't. Everything that Solomon says is wrong because Solomon's a hack. Boom, that's done. Oh, well, on fact 7, he cites Shokin. Of course, Shokin would lie, so there, nothing to say. But that's ridiculous. This is backed up by other facts. Fact 8. Burisma's American representatives lobbied the State Department in late February 2016 to help end the corruption allegations against the company and specifically invoked Hunter Biden's name as a reason to intervene. You could read the state official account of the effort here. Now think about this. February 2016, what do we know is going on? Shokin saying he's progressing the investigation. He's going to interview Hunter Biden. You can say he's corrupt. I don't believe that. Even if you don't, we know that that month, that same month, Shokin actually seized the property of Zlochevsky, the head of Burisma. Here we have, these are always done in reverse. They're a pain. Karen Tramontano of Blue Star Strategies requested a meeting to discuss U.S. Novelli USG marks alleging Burisma, the Ukrainian energy company, of corruption. She noted that 2 high-profile U.S. citizens are affiliated with the company, including Hunter Biden as a board member. Tramontano would like to talk with U.S. Novelli about getting a better understanding of how the U.S. came to the determination the company is corrupt. According to Tramontano, there is no evidence of corruption, has been no hearing or process, and evidence to the contrary is not being considered. Would appreciate any background information you could give on this. That's the defense. That is the defense lawyers for Burisma, for Hunter Biden's company that's being investigated for corruption, whose owner just had his property seized, reaching out to Obama's State Department saying, hey, can we work with you to get these corruption allegations put to the side? The same month that Shokin, this prosecutor, took Zlochevsky's property in context of investigating him, the lawyers for Zlochevsky are reaching out to the State Department under Obama saying, can you help us? That's not hearsay. That is official emails from the State Department proving that. Those emails directly mention the name of Hunter Biden. They say, we're not doing anything corrupt. Hunter Biden's here. That's not a conspiracy. That's not hearsay. That's not an opinion. That's fact. Vindman is wrong. Hill is wrong. That actually happened. So where are we at? Let's just go through the story real quick again. Joe Biden's the point man ending corruption. He's talking about giving Ukraine loans. He says this guy, Zlochevsky and Burisma, is corrupt. At the same time, his son starts working for Zlochevsky. His son is not qualified to do this work, yet he's getting paid huge amounts of money. Biden's aware that there's an investigation into his son through Shokin's department. Shokin's department and the prosecutors are actually meeting with officials in the United States, such as Eric Chermala, who will go on to be the whistleblower. Zlochevsky's property gets seized by Shokin in February 2016. At around the same time, Burisma's defense attorneys are contacting the State Department saying, can you help us? Hunter Biden works here. We're not doing anything wrong. That's where we're at right now. All backed up by facts. All of it. The only other additional fact that's just someone's word is Shokin said he was about to interview Hunter Biden. It's irrelevant to the grand scheme of the story. But it seems like it's plausible given all the lies that have been spread. Oh, Shokin had the case completely closed. We know that's a lie. We know that in February 2016, he was seizing the property of Zlochevsky. That's where we're at through 8 facts. All backed up with independent sourcing. Fact 9. Joe Biden boasted in a 2018 videotape that he forced Ukraine's president to fire Shokin in March of 2016 by threatening to withhold $1 billion in U.S. aid. You can view the tape here. We've all seen the tape. If you want to go rewatch it, you can click there and watch it. There's all kinds of exciting things on it, though. So he's admitting that he goes there in March of 2016, and what did he say in the tape? You can watch it yourself if you don't believe me, but Solomon does like it. He says, I told them they had 6 hours to fire Shokin, or I was walking away with the $1 billion loan guarantee. They replied to him, you're not the boss, Obama is, basically. Biden said, go ahead, call Obama. He'll say the same thing. And wouldn't you know it, within the 6 hours, they fired the son of a bitch. And then they replaced him with who, at the time, was a solid guy. That's it. That's Biden's own words. Now, one of the defenses I've heard given is, well, Biden's just a liar. He's a liar. What he said there's not true. It wasn't that they fired him because Biden demanded it. They were going to fire him anyways. If they were going to fire him anyways, why would they say, we don't have to listen to you, you're not the president? And he said, call Obama, he'll say. If they were going to fire him anyways, why risk the $1 billion at all? As soon as Biden said, hey, you got 6 hours, they'd say, well, we'll fire him, of course. We're going to fire him anyways. Instead, they push back. And then I've heard people say, well, it took 2 months for them to fire him. Yeah, that's because they agreed to fire him there. Shokin says in his sworn testimony what was going on. Basically, then from that point forward, Poroshenko, the president, kept going to Shokin being like, look, dude, you have to resign. It's going to cost our country $1 billion, or we're going to formally fire you. And it took a while for the parliamentary procedure to vote him out, to accept the resignation. But that's when they agreed to fire him. According to Joe Biden, if your defense is we shouldn't investigate Joe Biden for corruption because he's a liar, I think you're on pretty weak ground. Biden has no one to blame but himself that he was out there bragging and spilling the beans about what he did. He should be held accountable for his words. Fact 10. Shokin stated in interviews with me and ABC News that he was told he was fired because Joe Biden was unhappy the Burisma investigation wasn't shut down. He made the claim anew in sworn deposition prepared for a court in Europe. You could read it here. This was the deposition that I was discussing earlier. But I'll read you the relevant parts. If I could remember. I have to tell you, it's difficult. I've read all this stuff 100 times. Okay, I'll go through it real fast. This is sworn deposition he gave in a trial. The general prosecutor of the Ukraine is appointed, that was his office, and is voted on by Parliament. The circumstances of my dismissal was I tendered my resignation to the Rada at the request of President Poroshenko. Poroshenko asked me to resign due to pressure from the U.S. presidential administration, in particular from Joe Biden, who was the U.S. vice president. Biden was threatening to withhold $1 billion in subsidies to the Ukraine until I was removed from office. After I yielded to the president's request and submitted my resignation, Poroshenko commented about it in the media. He said, I carried out a colossal amount of work as general prosecutor, which is something none of my predecessors have been able to do, especially in regards to my work on reforming the different bodies of the prosecutor's office. The official reason put forward for my dismissal was that I allegedly failed to secure the public's trust. Poroshenko and other state officials, including representatives of U.S. presidential administrations, had never previously had any complaints about my work. That seems to be backed up by... Remember I read you that they actually, Shokin's office, the people that worked with him actually had a meeting with U.S. State Department officials, including the whistleblower Ciaramella? If he was so corrupt, why would they be working with him? And I haven't seen anyone present evidence that said previous to them wanting him booted out when Biden said that he was accused of anything. There were no grievances against me or any allegations I had committed any corruption-related criminal offenses. Biden never stated anything of the kind either. Furthermore, all sanctions in respect of Yanukovych and his supporters remained in force and were not lifted whilst I occupied the post. Moreover, these sanctions were extended. The truth is that I was forced out because I was leading a wide-ranging corruption probe into Burisma Holdings, a natural gas firm active in Ukraine, and Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, was a member of the board of directors. I assume Burisma, which was connected with gas extraction, had the support of Vice President Biden. On several occasions, Poroshenko asked me to have a look at the criminal case against Burisma and consider the possibility of winding down the investigative actions into the respect of this company. But I refused to close the investigation. Therefore, I was forced to leave office under direct and intense pressure from Joe Biden and the U.S. administration. And it goes on from there. Now, this is backed up. What did I just show you? Let's go back up for a second. Because I know, I'm smart enough to know, this is what's going to... Oh, Shokin's a liar. Shokin's corrupt. Of course he's going to say that. He wasn't doing anything into the investigation. Remember... Fact 6. What happened in February 2nd of 2016? According to official state documents of the Ukraine, according to their press, the official Ukraine news agency, The PGO filed a petition to the court to arrest the property of Zlochevsky. 922 square meters, a land plot of 0.24 hectares, a garden house with a total, etc., etc. This was carried out February 2nd, 2016. So when Shokin says, look, I was investigating. They were telling me to drop the investigation. This isn't proof of that, but it lends to the credibility because the Biden camp and all of the people that say Shokin was corrupt, their entire story is Shokin hadn't done anything with this investigation in months. He was just allowing it to fester. That's not true. Fact 11. The day Shokin's firing was announced in March 2016, Burisma's legal representative sought an immediate meeting with his temporary replacements to address the ongoing investigation. You could read their emails here. Now think of what this is saying. Remember, you had these lawyers. They petitioned the State Department after Zlochevsky. They're working for Burisma and Zlochevsky, Hunter Biden's company Burisma, and his boss Zlochevsky. These lawyers, okay? They see Zlochevsky gets a bunch of his property taken. So they contact the State Department. They say, listen, Burisma's not corrupt. We'd like to work with you to prove that we're not corrupt. Hunter Biden's a member here. Then Joe Biden issues his quid pro quo. Shokin gets fired. The day that Shokin gets fired, these same attorneys, what are they doing? They're trying to get a meeting with the new guy that's in charge immediately. This is the interim prosecutor, his official memo that was given as an official Ukrainian document to John Solomon. You can read it in Ukrainian if you want to. It does no good to me. Here's his statement. In the end of March 2016, Mr. O.O. Kordenko, head of the Department of Prosecutor General's Office of Ukraine, informed me that 3 U.S. citizens wanted to make an appointment to see me. I agreed to see them. These individuals turned out to be Karen Tramontano, Sally Painter, and John Beretta. The exact same Tramontano and Painter that were reaching out to the State Department saying, hey, Hunter Biden works here. Can we work with you to end investigations into our corruption? The day that Biden's quid pro quo demand is met, they're that day reaching out to the new Ukrainian interim prosecutor to talk to him to say, can we bury investigations? They turned out to be the representatives of Blue Star Strategies Company, and at the same time, Tramontano and Paino said that in the past they had worked in President Clinton's administration. The purpose of their visit was an apology for the dissemination of false information by U.S. representatives and public figures on the activities of the Prosecutor General's Office of Ukraine in regards to the investigation of criminal activities of Zlochevsky. Do you hear what they're saying? Now again, think about this for a moment. When we say Shokin says he wasn't corrupt, everyone says, who cares? He's corrupt. Everyone, they say, they're corrupt, Shokin's corrupt. They all have a reason to be biased. Here we have the 3 defense attorneys for Burisma admitting to the interim prosecutor, we're sorry that U.S. officials accused your predecessor and accused your office of being corrupt. We know that's not the case, and they were spreading disinformation. Now, why in God's name would the defense attorneys that are basically representing the interests of Hunter Biden, what incentive would they have to lie about what people like Joe Biden were saying? What they're doing is trying to kiss up to the new prosecutor saying, look, we know that other guy was doing a good job looking into us and he was ousted. So maybe you're thinking, holy cow, this corruption runs high. But no, in reality, we understand you. We'd like to work with you to kind of let bygones be bygones and bury this investigation. These individuals noted that they had been aware of the Prosecutor General's Office of Ukraine had implemented all required steps for prosecution of Zlochevsky, and that he was released by a British court due to the underperformance of British law. I thank the representatives for such an assessment of the activities of the Prosecutor Office of Ukraine and introduced them to the results of the reforms of the prosecutor's departments, including the results published on the website of the Prosecutor General's Office. The above-mentioned individuals were surprised by this info and said that entirely different information had been disseminated at the U.S. Department of State about the failure of reforms at the U.S. Prosecutor's Office. But after they got introduced to materials provided, They realized the information disseminated in the U.S. was incorrect, and they would facilitate my visit to the U.S. for the purpose of delivering the true information to the State Department. The visit was prepared, but was canceled after Litsenko was nominated. He attaches the business cards that he received from these people at the meeting to prove that the meeting happened. So what's going on here? That's an official government record of the Ukraine. That's not hearsay. So let's think what's going on here. Do you see what it's saying? These groups pressured the State Department. Hey, Hunter Biden works for our company. Hunter Biden works for Burisma. Could you somehow help us end the investigation into Burisma? Almost within a month of that, Joe Biden's out there demanding a quid pro quo. By the end of that month, saying you have to fire the prosecutor looking into Burisma. So they fire him the day that he gets fired. These lawyers are back on the phone, contacting the new interim prosecutor. They say, look, we know that the prosecutor's office did everything they could. They were doing things on the up and up. And this was all because of Britain. But we'd like to work with you. We'll facilitate you coming to the State Department and talking with people at U.S. State Department to end the investigations into us. Wait, what? So not only is the bombshell, they're admitting that Shokin wasn't a corrupt guy, but they're also admitting that they have contacts with State Department who will help bury this or end the investigation. That's an official Ukrainian document. This isn't hearsay. Now, if you want to make the extreme leap, well, I have no proof that Ukraine's government couldn't have forged that document. Okay, but that's not calling Solomon a liar. That's a stretch. That's an incredible stretch. But it's certainly not calling Solomon a liar. Solomon actually got the documents from Ukraine. No one discussed that. The day that Solomon released this report, I couldn't believe it. I did a video immediately. I knew it was coming out because he mentioned it the night before on Hannity. As soon as he got it, I released a video. Then I started a countdown. It was like a week later. No one's addressed this. 2 weeks later, no one's addressed this. The only part they addressed was Shokin saying that he was going to investigate. They said, Shokin was corrupt. Everyone knew it. The EU knew it. The IMF knew it. Everybody knew it. Everybody knew Shokin was corrupt. Okay, but that's not what he swore to, but whatever. Skip that part. What incentive do the defense attorneys for Burisma have? Are they corrupt as well? Were they lying when they said Shokin was doing a good job? Why would they lie? Why would they lie that hurt the Bidens, who Hunter Biden was on the board of directors of the company they were defending? Why would they lie? And instead of addressing this, people just said, Solomon's making it up. He's not. I just showed you the document. Well, he's an opinion writer. Who cares? He provided the official document. Well, he's a hack. Who cares? I don't like CNN, right? If CNN links to the testimony of Ambassador Sondland, I'm not going to say, that testimony must be forged. It's not worth looking at. Because it's not CNN's opinion on that. It's them saying, here's the actual document. But not when it comes to Solomon. They just say, he's a hack. He's all wrong. Now, I've gone through 11 of these points. We still got 17 to get through. Have you seen one that wasn't backed up with facts? Even one. Nope. What was Vinzvin's claim? It was all wrong. What was Hill's claim? What was Yovanovitch's claim? All of it's conspiracy theories. These are all conspiracy theories. What Volker say? There's no way that Biden could have did anything shady. He's the vice president. I've known him for years. He couldn't have did anything shady. Notice none of them talked on the specifics of what Solomon's saying. None of them. Has the rest of the media talked about it? No, instead they wrote stories that said things like, other writers at the Hill are upset with John Solomon, and they demanded that he be called an opinion writer. Why? Have you seen anything here that was opinions? Nothing that he's shown so far was an opinion. Not one thing. He's just laying out the facts. I'm giving you opinion as what it all means. I think it's informed opinion and it's correct, but Solomon's not. He's just laying out the facts. Number 12, Burisma's legal representative secured that meeting on April 6, 2016 and told Ukrainian prosecutors that false information had been spread to justify Shokin's firing, according to the Ukrainian government memo about the meeting. That's the memo I just read to you. The representatives also offered to arrange for the remaining Ukrainian prosecutors to meet with U.S. state and justice officials. You can read the prosecutor's summary memo of the meeting here and here, and the Burisma's lawyer's invite to Washington here. So I already showed you the memo. Here's their invite to Washington. Oh, that's just going to link to it. Sullivan's article. But I showed you the actual official claim from the Ukrainian prosecutor. 13. Burisma officials eventually settled the Ukraine investigations in late 2016 and early 2017, paying a multi-million-dollar fine for tax issues. You can read the lawyer's February 2017 announcement of the end of the investigations here. The lawyer's going to be named John Beretta. Does that sound familiar? That was the name that I just read in the memo to you. That's the defense attorney. In mid-January, Burisma Group announced that all cases against its president, Zlochevsky, and Burisma companies were fully closed. The former minister, Zlochevsky, is one of the few public officials from the previous government who voluntarily subjected himself to investigation. After reviewing the evidence in London and Kiev, the criminal proceedings against Zlochevsky were dismissed. In Ukraine media, opinions about the need for presenting a public report at the time closed. Let me check one thing here. There you have it, proof. The investigation was finally closed in February 2017. So the official narrative that we've been given is, oh no, when Shokin was there was no investigation, it was closed. Even though he seized Zlochevsky's properties in February 2016. But despite that, the narrative was, nope, he wasn't doing anything. Then Biden, the very next month, forces him to be fired. I skipped a step. Shokin takes Zlochevsky's property. Around the same time, the defense attorneys for Zlochevsky and Burisma contact State Department and say, Hunter Biden works here. Can you please help us stop the investigations into corruption? Then within a month, Joe Biden goes out and demands Shokin be fired. Shokin ends up getting fired. Within a year of Shokin getting fired, the case is finally buried and all criminal charges are dropped against Zlochevsky. Now, I don't think that it's here, but it's in Sullivan's other reporting. Who got that investigation? It was called the NABU. That's who ended up settling the investigation. That's also backed up by independent documents. The NABU is the organization that ended up giving Zlochevsky a slap on the wrist, dropping all criminal charges, and just charging him back taxes. The NABU is an organization that was set up with funds from the Obama administration and were close allies of Obama. And as we'll get to later, the head of the NABU, Artem Sitnik, was actually found guilty in a Ukrainian court for interfering in the 2000 election to help Hillary Clinton. So in other words, the narrative that we're given from the Biden defense people is this. Joe Biden actually wanted Burisma investigated harder. He thought this prosecutor Shokin was corrupt and not doing the investigation. And so once they got him out of the way, the stumbling block would be removed. Because remember, Biden and Obama and the IMF and the EU, they all said Zlochevsky and Burisma were guilty. They said they were corrupt. So if we just get this corrupt prosecutor out of there, then finally we could have a real investigation. So they get the corrupt prosecutor out. And it goes to the NABU, which is allied with the Obama administration. And within a year, what do? Bury the investigation with a slap on the wrist and drop all criminal charges. Now that's backed up by actual evidence. Even I don't have the NABU portion of it in front of me right now, but fine, you could disregard that. Everything else I said is right. It's right there. The investigation was after the investigation. While Shokin was there, the month before Shokin was being fired, they're actually doing things like taking away the property of Zlochevsky. That's what's happening in February 2016. He's forced to be fired by Biden because he says, you're corrupt, you're not investigating him. And then within a year, the investigations are all dropped against Zlochevsky. Doesn't that sound mighty suspicious? And what I've been saying, and I haven't heard Solomon say this is my opinion. This isn't Solomon saying it, so don't lump this on him. But I think it makes sense. Why wouldn't then, if Obama and Biden and the EU and the IMF and all these groups knew that Burisma was corrupt, and that its owner, Zlochevsky, was a corrupt oligarch with pro-Putin interests, they'd been repeating it over and over, and they said, we need to get this corrupt prosecutor Shokin out of there because he's not investigating. Why wouldn't they speak up then when the NABU a year later in 2017 dropped the charges? Why wouldn't they speak up and say, whoa, we already withheld aid once because you weren't investigating corrupt oligarchs. Now we're going to recommend don't give them aid again. Because the new prosecutor is the same as the old prosecutor. Why didn't they say that? Instead, they were unbelievably silent. So you mean Zlochevsky's defense attorneys wrote to the State Department. And then we don't know the communications because there hasn't been an investigation. There should be. Who did they talk to? If they talked to anyone at State Department? But just mysteriously, they actually got exactly what they wanted. Biden forced the firing of the prosecutor that was looking into them, that had just taken away the property of their owner. Then that same day, they reach out to the interim prosecutor. They say, look, we know that Shokin was doing a good job. We know your office was doing a good job, okay? We know it wasn't your fault. And we know that U.S. politicians were spreading disinfo. But can you please come back to Washington with us and talk to the U.S. people so we can finally get this investigation quashed? Now that's damning. That's at least reason to investigate right there. Who at State Department was telling them to quash the investigation while Biden's publicly saying Burisma's guilty? Now maybe the argument is, look, they never did talk to anyone at State Department. Okay, but the evidence is there to warrant an investigation. And then, after all that, what happens? The case is dropped within a year, and no one speaks up. All the people that had a problem with Zlochevsky and Burisma, they're silent when the case is finally buried. Almost like that's exactly what they wanted to have happen. Now again, is this proof of Biden's guilt? Nope, but it's definitely proof that we need to have an investigation into both Hunter Biden and what was going on there, and certainly into Joe Biden threatening to withhold $1 billion of congressional aid in the form of me and yours tax dollars to force the firing of a prosecutor who had just a month earlier taken the property of the owner of Burisma. And it just so happens that Biden's son's on the board of directors of that company. Certainly that warrants an investigation. Evidence to back up every single thing that I just said there. Every single thing I've just showed you. That's what Solomon's been saying the entire time. And instead people are saying, hey, he's an opinion writer. Oh, he's all full of it. It's all conspiracy theory. 14. In March 2019, Ukraine authorities reopened an investigation against Burisma and Zlochevsky based on new evidence of money laundering. You can read the NABU's February 2019 recommendation to reopen the case here. The March 2019 notice of suspicion here. And the May 2019 here with Ukrainian senior law enforcement officials stating the investigation was ongoing. Here's the investigation from this week, showing that it's been expanded to include allegations of theft of Ukrainian funds. February 10th, 2019, NABU prepares draft notice of suspicion on episode involving ex-minister Zlochevsky. Here's the Ukrainian General Prosecutor notice of suspicion dated March 28, 2019, announcing opening of new investigation against Burisma. I can't read Ukrainian. Sitnik, this is from May 16, 2019. NABU has not closed cases related to Zlochevsky. From this week, November 20th, 2 days ago, Ukrainian widens probe against Burisma founder to embezzlement of state funds. Is that just Solomon's opinions? No, it's backed up again. Fact 15. Ukrainian embassy in Washington issued a statement in April 2019 admitting that a Democrat National Committee contractor named Alexandra Chalupa solicited Ukrainian officials in spring of 2016 for dirt on the Trump campaign manager Manafort in hopes of staging a congressional hearing close to the 2000 election that would damage Trump's election chances. You could read the embassy statement here and here. Dr. Fiona Hill confirmed this episode testifying, Ukraine bet on the wrong horse. They bet on Hillary Clinton winning. Official April 25th, 2019 statement of Ukrainian embassy in Washington to The Hill concerning the activities of Democratic National Committee Alexandra Chalupa during the 2016 election. Quote, the embassy, this is the Ukrainian embassy. The embassy got to know Ms. Chalupa because of her engagement with Ukrainian and other diasporas in Washington, D.C., and not in her DNC capacity. We learned about her DNC involvement later. We were surprised to see Alexandra's interest in Paul Manafort. It was her own case. The embassy representative unambiguously refused to get involved in any way, as we were convinced that this is strictly a U.S. domestic matter. No documents related to the Trump campaign or any individuals involved in the campaign have been passed to Ms. Chalupa or the DNC, neither from the embassy nor via the embassy. No documents exchanged were even discussed. All ideas floated by Alexandra were related to approaching a member of Congress with a purpose to initiate hearings on Paul Manafort or letting an investigative journalist ask President Poroshenko a question about Mr. Manafort during his public talk in D.C. We said no to all. Do you get what's going on? That's the official document from the embassy saying that a DNC operative came to them soliciting dirt on Paul Manafort. Confirmed. Fact 16. Chalupa sent an email to top DNC officials in May 2016 acknowledging she was working on the Manafort issue. You can read the email here. Now, I've been told over and over again, this is all conspiracy. There's no proof. Now, remember, the argument with Don Jr. and when all the left said he committed treason and we needed to have this 3-year investigation into partially the Trump Tower meeting, right? We know that Don Jr. never got dirt, but the argument was him seeking to meet and get dirt from a foreign official was a crime. That was the argument. It warranted an investigation. We have admissions through Chalupa's own emails from the Ukraine embassy that a DNC operative named Chalupa was seeking to get official Ukrainian help in the form of dirt on Manafort to affect the 2016 election. From Alexandra Chalupa to Louise Miranda, I guess. A lot more coming down the pipe. This is Chalupa. I spoke to a delegation of 68 investigative journalists from Ukraine last Wednesday at the Library of Congress, the Open World Society Forum. They put me on the program to speak specifically about Paul Manafort, and I invited Michael Isakov, who I've been working with for the past few weeks, and connected him to the Ukrainians. More offline tomorrow, since there is a big Trump component you and Lauren need to be aware of that will hit in the next few weeks, and something I'm working on that you should be aware of. Since I started digging into Manafort, these messages have been a daily occurrences. You get that? That's from the WikiLeaks emails, the DNC emails. Chalupa's admitting, I'm working with Ukrainians getting this dirt. Something big's about to break. That's not an opinion. That's not hearsay. That is directly from Chalupa's emails. Directly from the Ukraine embassy saying what she was up to. She's trying to get Ukrainian officials to cooperate in spreading and smearing dirt about Trump. Is anyone still with me? Still got Flavia. Thank you. Now, I know, by the way, let me just pause here for a second. This might not be the most exciting stuff in the world. Me telling the narrative of what's going on, that's fine. But actually going through piece by piece the evidence, not the most exciting thing in the world. But I'm doing this for you and for me. That way, every time I talk about something that Solomon said and people say, no, he's all a liar, I can say, here, shut up. You tell me what part's a lie. Put on your devil's advocate cap right now. What can you legitimately say so far that he's reported as these facts that are untrue? Not one thing. Every single fact has been backed up by at least one, and most times multiple sources. Every single one. Not sources of people saying, I heard that Chalupa said this, or I heard that Hunter Biden did this, from official government documents. Fact 17. Ukraine's ambassador to Washington, Valery Chile, wrote an op-ed in The Hill on August 2016, slamming GOP nominee Trump for his policies on Russia, despite a Geneva Convention requirement that ambassadors not become embroiled in the internal affairs or elections of their host countries. You can read the op-ed here. You can read the Geneva Convention rules here. Yovanovitch and Hill both confirmed in their testimony that Chile's op-ed was, quote, probably not the most advisable thing to do. This is Ambassador Chalet raiding in the Hill. Just read part of it. A candidate for presidency in any country ought to realize the challenges he or she will face to ensure consistency in foreign policy and uphold his country's international commitments. Ukraine, a strategic partner of the U.S., entered the 1994 Budapest multilateral commitment. The commitment has been broken by Russia. They're going to say Russia has unleashed a repressive regime. The annexation of Crimea is bad. Russia did enter Ukraine in 2014 and will keep invading. Last week, the Ministry of Defense reported 22 flights of unmanned aerial vehicles operated. It's a bloody war, blah, blah, blah. But she's basically saying it was a mistake for Trump to say that. Now, I don't think this is the biggest deal in the world. But you can see how it would upset Trump. And the problem is the Geneva Convention says you can't have ambassadors basically giving arguments for one president over another. I'm not going to go through it. It's 164 pages. But here it is. You can see it. He links it. Not the biggest point, and I'll be honest, when you heard the Republicans in the impeachment testimony talking about Ukrainians interfering in the election, they kept bringing this up. That's fine to bring it up, but this isn't a focus whatsoever. Sure, Chile wrote bad things about him. What it does is it further buttresses the next point we're going to talk about. But Solomon backs it up with facts, right? Fact 18. Ukrainian District Court ruled in December 2018 that the summer 2016 release of information by Ukrainian parliamentary member Sergei Lyshenko and NABU, remember that? The National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine? It was allies with Obama. Obama's State Department helped set up. NABU Director Artem Sitnik about an ongoing investigation of Manafort amounted to, quote, an improper interference by Ukraine's government in the 2016 election. You can read the court ruling here. Lyshenko and Sitnik deny the allegations and won an appeal to suspend the ruling on a technicality. Let's see what it says. Publication of Manafort payments violated law. Interfered in U.S. election, Kiev court rules. 2 Ukrainian officials violated the law by revealing information about millions of dollars of alleged illegal payments to lobbyist and former chair of U.S. President Donald Trump's election campaign, Paul Manafort, a Kiev district said on December 12th. In reviewing the administrative case filed by lawmaker Borislav Rosenblatt, the court concluded that Sitnik, director of the National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine, and parliamentarian Sergei Lyshenko acted illegally when they revealed that Manafort's surname and signature were found in the so-called Black Ledger of ousted President Yanukovych's party of region. The, quote, Black Ledger is alleged to be a secret accounting book which shows suspicious payments by the party of a range of individuals and officials. It became a key document in implicating Manafort in corruption in Ukraine. In a statement on its website, the court also appeared to describe the two men's actions as constituting interference in the 2016 United States election. The release of the information about the Black Ledger, which was part of a pretrial investigation, quote, from the court, led to the interference in the electoral processes of the United States in 2016 and harmed the interest of the Ukraine as a state. Now, you might be shocked to hear that. Why might you be shocked to hear that? Because if you followed the impeachment testimony, you heard Yanukovych and Hill and Volker and Holmes. Am I missing anyone? Oh, Vindman, of course. They said that's all a lie. There was no election interference. They all said they were troubled that Trump, even the election interference part, they said they were troubled that Trump was listening to Giuliani's conspiracy theories and that he wanted to look into that. They were troubled by that. Remember? That's what they said. There's no evidence. It was all debunked. That's what they said. Now, I also provided evidence previously. Lyshenko publicly admitting in the Financial Times of August 2016, which maybe it's later in this, so I won't talk about it too much. Publicly admitting, yes, I'm interfering in the election. I'm releasing this Black Ledger. This is kind of what I call part 2 of what Solomon's trying to prove here. Part 1 had to do with the Bidens and that corruption. This is part 2, election interference, right? Now go back. What did we learn? Chalupa, according to official State Department records from the Ukrainian embassy, and according to WikiLeaks of Chalupa's own emails, admits she's trying to talk to Ukrainian officials to get dirt on Manafort. In her email, she says, stay tuned, something big's coming in a couple weeks on Trump. Then we have Sergei Lyshenko announce this black ledger with the NABU and Sitnik about Trump. Then that's used to force the firing of Manafort. So we have a DNC operative saying, hey, I'm talking to Ukrainians. I'm in the loop that something big's coming down in a couple weeks. Now, that information, that black ledger, had to come from the NABU. That's where the investigation was ongoing. That means that Chalupa worked directly with officials in the Ukraine to smear Trump with dirt. The exact same thing they accused Don Jr. of, but he didn't do. The exact same thing that was accused of Trump that he didn't do, that we needed a 3-year investigation into. But when it comes to the Ukrainians doing that and the DNC seeking that help, what's the Democrats say? What do all the bipartisan or the nonpartisan witnesses, State Department officials, that's how they all describe themselves, what did they say? Well, we didn't think that was a big deal. Fiona Hill in her closed-door testimony, if you go back and you watch my video, she specifically said, my family wasn't concerned about the Black Ledger. They were concerned about healthcare and education when they voted. Why is that a reason to ignore Russian interference? Now remember, how many times did you hear Hill and Vindman say things like, if you say that Ukrainians interfered, that's benefiting Russia. That's just benefiting Russia. We all know that it was Russia that interfered. How dare you if you think Ukraine interfered, then you're saying Russia didn't interfere. That's not what anyone's saying at all. The actual evidence quite clearly shows the Ukrainian court thought they interfered. And if the Ukrainian court found them guilty of that, although it was overturned on a technicality or suspended, that shows there's at least enough evidence for a U.S. court to investigate. Fact 19. George Soros Open Society Foundation issued a memo in February 2016 on its strategy for Ukraine, identifying the non-profit Anti-Corruption Action Center as the lead for its efforts. You could read the memo here. Get it? The Anti-Corruption Action Center. That name's going to be important in a minute. Oh boy. I know I've read this. I can't remember where it's at. It's so hard on these PDFs to find the... I'm just looking for where he specifically talks about. He does talk about the Anti-Corruption Action Center in here. Well, you might just have to take my word for it. But double check. Don't take my word, to be honest. Read it yourself. But he mentions, and it's backed up in a memo from George Soros, the Anti-Corruption Action Center is their lead in the Ukraine. Okay? That's just background information. Fact 20. State Department and Soros Foundation jointly fund the Anti-Corruption Action Center. You can read about the funding here from the center's own funding and George Kent's testimony. Now, I'm not going to bring up George Kent's testimony, but George Kent admits, yes, I know who funded it. It was the Obama administration, State Department, and it was the Open Society Foundation. This is the group, the Anti-Corruption, and the Open Society Foundation is George Soros. Oh boy, what a terrible website, huh? But you can check George Kent's testimony as well, where he talks specifically about this. It's funded by Soros and the State Department. Get it? Soros. So all these 2 points are showing Soros This memo admits the Anti-Corruption Action Center is our group in the Ukraine. Fact 20 shows Obama's State Department and Soros are funding the Anti-Corruption Action Center. Got it? Fact 21. In April 2016, a U.S. Embassy charged affair George Kent sent a letter to Ukrainian Prosecutor General's office demanding that Ukrainian prosecutors stand down a series of investigation into how Ukrainian nonprofits spent U.S. aid dollars, including the Anti-Corruption Action Center. You could read the letter here. Kent testified he signed it here. I showed you this in my live streams recently. Who signs it? George Kent. Let's see what it says. The last 3 paragraphs. Remember, he's writing to a Ukrainian prosecutor saying, us at the State Department, the groups we've given money to, it's all been legit. Trust us. That's the context. Here's what he says. We're completely satisfied that the assistance in question has only been used for the purposes and, as stated above, do not see any grounds from our perspective as the donor who provided the assistance for an investigation into their use. In other words, we gave the money. We don't think there's any need for an investigation. Given the above, we reject allegations that Mr. Sakravedis or anyone within the Prosecutor General's office with whom we worked could have misused these funds since they were never under their control. All right, you ready? Here's the good part. The investigations into the actions of the Anti-Corruption Action Center, based on the assistance they have received from us, is similarly misplaced. As voiced by European Union Ambassador Jan Tubinsky, we are gravely concerned about this investigation, for which we see no basis and which appears to us to be an attempt to intimidate those in the Prosecutor General's office most committed to combating corruption, as well as non-governmental partners and outspoken anti-corruption activists. We're really concerned about this investigation. We don't think there's a need from it. What does he say in the last paragraph? The United States is committing to supporting reforms with the PGO and to building capacity to meet citizens' demands to recover stolen assets and counter corruption within the government. Sincerely, George Kent. In other words, what they accused Trump of doing, they said, there's assistance going to you. We assist you. We're doing really good. Yeah, thank you. Also, we have some requests. They said, that was a quid pro quo. Here we have the exact same thing. We want you to drop the investigation. Hey, we give you a lot of support. We're trying to help you recover money. Now, if you remember, Vindman and Yovanovitch and Hill, they kept saying, Sergei Litsenko, right? Not Sergei. Litsenko, the prosecutor, he's corrupt. He was telling Rudy Giuliani and this reporter, John Solomon, he was telling him that Yovanovitch and others at State Department were pressuring him to drop investigations. We're saying that investigations he were doing wasn't good. And they all said it was a lie. They all said it was debunked. Did you just see this letter from George Kent admitting? They see no basis for the investigation. They think this is trying to harm their allies. That's the letter George Kent wrote. That's not hearsay. That's an official document from George Kent. That's George Kent's testimony. But we were told over and over and over by Vindman, by Hill, by Yovanovitch, all of them said, this is a lie. We never pressured anyone. That's what they all testified to. No one at State Department pressured. George Kent's admitting right there. Let's move on. Fact 22. Then Ukraine Prosecutor General Yurhey Litsenko said in a televised interview with me that Ambassador Yovanovitch, during a 2016 meeting, provided a list of names of Ukrainian nationals, a group she did not want to see prosecute. You can see the video here and see that he quoted him correctly, which I'm not going to bring up the video, but it links to the video. Fact 23. Yovanovitch and our embassy denied Litsenko's claim, calling it a fabrication, which he says you can see here. And this is Solomon saying, I didn't lie. I talked to Litsenko, and Litsenko told me this is what happened. I talked to Yovanovitch, and Yovanovitch said, no, it didn't happen. Okay?
A lot of times Americans always want to know how.
So that's not proof there. He's just saying, look, my reporting was legit. I talked to both sides, and I gave both sides of the argument. Fact 24. Despite the differing accounts of what happened at the Litsenko-Yovanovitch meeting, a senior U.S. official in an interview arranged by the State Department stated to me in spring of 2019 that U.S. officials did pressure Litsenko's office on several occasions not to prosecute, investigate, or harass certain Ukrainian activists, including parliamentary member Lyshenko, journalist Vitaly Shabunyan, and Anti-Corruption Action Center and NABU director Sitnik. You could read that official's comments here. George Kent testified to the same. Luckily, I remember exactly because this, to me, is the biggest, as I said at the outset of this is the biggest revelation. Let's see what George Kent testified to. Now, I want to briefly bring this up, right? Why is this important? I don't know. Let me see. One second. We'll just end this part. Okay. Why is this important? I talked about this at the outset. They're making this story that Yovanovitch was fired. She's the beginning of their story for impeachment. She's saying that basically she was this noble person fighting corruption, and so Trump needed her out of there so that they could be corrupt. They needed to replace her with someone corrupt. That's the narrative. And it's so sad, her life. Why would you let go of a great person like her? And then the smears are what's the worst. The lies about her. Notice they never talk about what specific lies. So they ask her briefly. The Republicans should have did a far better job of this. They say, look, you're saying Litsenko's corrupt and he's lying about you. Yep. So you never did pressure anyone? Nope. This is George Kent's closed-door testimony. Who's George Kent? He was the person who was in charge of this in 2016 at the State Department. The charge d'affaires, they call him. This is his closed-door testimony. The Democrat witness. Let's see what he says. This is Castor. If you remember, Castor is the Republican counsel. The questioner will be Castor. Answer will be George Kent. This is the official testimony of George Kent. This isn't hearsay from Litsenko or Solomon. The official testimony of George Kent. Now remember, we were told it's all been debunked. Litsenko's corrupt. He's a liar. No one ever pressured him to do anything. It's all a lie. That's what we were told, right? That's what everyone said. Okay, let's see what George Kent testified to. Question from, again, Castor. At any point in time, were names of officials, whether as for any reason, shared with the prosecutor's office in connection with do not prosecute? Answer. Well, again, we don't go in and say do not prosecute. The types of conversation that we might be construed are different. Question. You mentioned the name Sitnik earlier. Answer. Artem Sitnik, who is still in the first head of the so-called NABU, the National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine. Question. And was he ever in the crosshairs of Litsenko? Answer. He was. Question. Was he being investigated? Answer. To the best of my knowledge, yes. There were open prosecutor general investigations into Mr. Sitnik. Question. Do you know if anyone at the embassy ever asked Litsenko not to investigate Sitnik? Answer. You ready for this? Well, I would characterize the interactions as different. Because what we warned both Litsenko and others, the efforts to destroy the NABU as an organization, including opening up investigations of Sitnik, threatened to unravel a key component of our anti-corruption cooperation. I'm going to come back here for a second. I'm losing all my viewers. That's okay. Do you understand what he's saying here? Do you get it? They said Litsenko's a corrupt liar. He made it all up when he said he was pressured. George Kent's testimony is, yes, we at State Department specifically told Litsenko and others, we won't tolerate you opening up investigations into Sitnik because it will jeopardize our cooperation with you. What was the cooperation? Billions of dollars, manpower, other types of aid. Do you see what's going on? And instead of answering these specific claims that Solomon's making in his articles, this isn't Solomon citing some Rudy Giuliani or some Ukrainian that hates Joe Biden or that's in the bag for Trump. This is George Kent, the Democrat witness, admitting, yeah, we did tell Litsenko not to investigate Sitnik or it would jeopardize our cooperation. But then in the same breath, all of these other people are lying, perjuring themselves. That's Fiona Hill. That's Holmes. That's Yovanovitch. Every single person that said, Lutsenko is lying, we never pressured him. They're lying. That's why they didn't get too specific about their lies, so they could have reasonable doubt later to say, oh, we didn't mean that. They just kept saying, everything Lutsenko said was a lie. It's all a lie. Everything Solomon said is a conspiracy and a lie. We're on fact 24. Have you seen one thing that's a lie? One thing that hasn't been backed up by outside evidence? There hasn't been one. Now, I talked about this. Who was Sitnik? I just read you the portion on Sitnik. By the way, George Kent goes on to talk about how they pressured him in his testimony to not investigate Lutsenko, to not investigate Shabunian, who's in the Anti-Corruption Action Center. You already saw George Kent's letter saying, we don't want investigations in the Anti-Corruption Action Center. What did Lutsenko say? He said in an interview with me that Yovanovitch, during a meeting, provided a list of names of Ukrainian nationals, a group she did not want to see prosecuted. Yovanovitch denied that. Now we know that the thrust of that is true. The State Department, even if it wasn't specifically her, was providing Lutsenko with names of people not to prosecute. Admitted. Official documentation by George Kent? By an unnamed ambassador? Or an unnamed person at State Department that also admitted that? To Solomon, and by George Kent's own testimony. Admitted. Who was Sitnik? Who were Lutsenko? Who were those two people? Well, remember that article I read about Ukrainian court finding two people guilty of interfering in the U.S. election? Now let's pause here. Do you look at this story, at this part of it? A DNC operative, we know from official Ukrainian embassy documents, a DNC operative named Alexander Chalupa is reaching out to them, trying to get dirt on Manafort. From Chalupa's own emails, we know that she's in contact with Ukrainians, and something big's about to drop about Manafort. We know that a parliamentarian named Lutsenko and the head of their anti-corruption bureau named Sitnik released this Black Ledger dirt on Manafort. We know from quotes that they made that the reason they did this was they didn't want Trump to win. They were trying to help Hillary. And they would continue to try to help Hillary. That's what the Financial Times August 2016 article says. We know at the same time Lutsenko's saying, look, I was unhappy. Ukrainian prosecutors were unhappy because State Department people like Yovanovitch were telling us you can't investigate these people because they have ties to Obama. Yovanovitch says that's a lie. All the witnesses say that's a lie. But George Kent shows a letter that shows that's true and his own testimony that admits, yes, we told Lutsenko you can't prosecute Sitnik. And what was it that Sitnik did again? Interfered in the 2016 election to help Hillary. None of this is conjecture. We know that Chalupa was looking for the dirt. We know she reached out to the embassy. We know her own email said she knew a bombshell was coming. We know that Ukrainians admitted to interfering in the election to help Hillary. We know that Lutsenko said he was trying to investigate him, and we know that he said that he was told by people at State Department to drop those investigations into election interference, and we have an admission from George Kent that yes, that's exactly what happened. All evidenced. Every single piece. Not opinion. That's not John Solomon just spouting off. That's not him just making a claim without evidence. All of it backed up. Every single bit of it. Now again, if you were just a normal person, you weren't looking into this, and you're just watching the impeachment hearings, what did you hear? Because the Republicans suck. They didn't nail down on this. I was screaming about it all week. They let these witnesses just get up and say, this is all debunked. Lutsenko's corrupt. Everything he says is a lie. John Solomon's just a conspiracy theorist. All of his allegations were a lie. Maybe the grammar was correct, but that's it. Everything else was wrong. Everything's been debunked. There was no corruption. We're 24 facts in, and so far, here's what we've proven so far. DNC operative was working to try to get dirt from Ukraine, which she succeeded in doing, where Ukrainian officials admitted to interfering in the election. The prosecutor wanted to look into him, but was told by State Department no, and we have admissions from people at State Department like George Kent saying, yes, that's exactly what we did. We said you can't investigate this guy for interfering in the 2016 election. What did I start off saying at the beginning? That is We were told for 3 years that foreign interference is the biggest deal. It's an act of war. No stone needs to be unturned. We now know that State Department people, the very same witnesses that are testifying against Donald Trump, actually used their authority without the express approval of anyone that the American people voted for to threaten to end cooperation or to jeopardize cooperation if investigation into Obama allies and into Ukrainian election interference that helped Hillary wasn't dropped. That is corruption of the highest level. And we're going to impeach the President of the United States based on the words of these same State Department officials? Don't you think they have an incentive to not want Trump to investigate this? And what else did we learn? We learned that Hunter Biden was on the board of Burisma, that his dad said that Burisma was corrupt. At the same time, his dad was in charge of any corruption and giving aid and loans to the Ukraine. His son was on the board of directors of a company by a corrupt oligarch. We know that the prosecutor Shokin, 1 month before he was forced to be fired by Joe Biden, seized the property of Zlochevsky in connection with that investigation. We know that everyone's lied and said Shokin hadn't done anything for months in that investigation. The investigation had stalled. Nothing was being done. He was allowing Zlochevsky to walk free. He was bribed, is what a lot of the witnesses said. There was a bribe or something with this prosecutor, so he wasn't approaching Zlochevsky. That's not true. We know in February 2016 that he took this property from Zlochevsky and he was forced to be fired in March of 2016. Around the same time, he took that property from Zlochevsky. The defense attorneys for Burisma and Zlochevsky reached out to State Department and said, look, Hunter Biden works here. Can you do something to end this investigation and these accusations of corruption? Joe Biden then within the month steps in and says you have to fire Shokin. Ukraine does fire Shokin. The investigation then gets kicked to the NABU. The NABU buries the investigation. Lets him go with the slap on the wrist. The lawyers immediately, when Shokin gets fired, contact the new interim prosecutor. The lawyers for Hunter Biden's company admit that officials like Joe Biden lied and Shokin wasn't corrupt. And actually, he was investigating. They suggest that the new prosecutor come with them to meet officials in the State Department. But we don't have any records to was there official communication to the State Department because we're told to even have an investigation is criminal. Now, what does this all add up to? We got a couple more facts to get to, I'll get to, but where are we at right now? What did I say if you've been listening to me? The Republicans are making a mistake because they're making defensive points to argue for Trump. So the points they're focusing on is the whistleblower is corrupt. That's fine. You can make that point. And that there was no quid pro quo. Fine. You can make that point. Those are both defensive points. But the best argument is, the accusation is there was a quid pro quo offered to investigate Biden Burisma in 2016 election interference. Right? That's the accusation. And that's corrupt. The best defense of that is, no, that's not corrupt. That's exactly what we should be doing. And all the facts I just outlaid proves that beyond a reasonable doubt. Doesn't prove that Biden's guilty. Doesn't prove that Hunter Biden's guilty. Doesn't even prove that Alexandra Chalupa's guilty. But it certainly proves there's enough evidence to warrant an investigation. And if there's evidence to warrant an investigation, then there's no case to impeach Trump. Now you might say, but you still can't have a quid pro quo. Why? That's what Biden did and everyone said it was okay. They say Biden's quid pro quo was because it was to out corruption. So if we have a plausible explanation of there needs to be an investigation into Biden's Ukrainian interference and Burisma, then we should also have a quid pro quo in the name of outing corruption. It's that simple. All of this has been written off as John Solomon's a hack. You're biased. He's an opinion writer. Lutsenko's a liar. Everyone's a liar. They're all liars. They're wrong about everything. Moving on. That's it. That's literally been the answer to all of these. Specific evidence backed up by official documents. The answer's just been, it's all wrong. It's all wrong. It's all an opinion piece. We don't have to listen to it. Does any of this look like opinion so far? Now, me extrapolating exactly what's going on, you could say that's my spin on it. Fair enough. I think that I'm doing it justice. But so far, the 24 facts that Solomon's laid out, not one opinion. It's all been sourced. There have been a couple things where Shokin says, I said this. Shokin says I said that, and you might say, well, Shokin might be lying. Fair enough, but Solomon's accurately reporting what he's saying. And everything else is backed up by official testimony, official communications and documents from Ukrainian government, from the U.S. government, from official emails of people. Fact 25, getting towards the end, thank God, huh? In May 2018, then House Rules Committee Chairman Pete Sessions sent an official congressional letter to Secretary of State Mike Pompeo asking that Yovanovitch be recalled as ambassador to the Ukraine. Sessions and State confirmed the official letter, which you could read here. This was another thing that he reported. My computer's crapping out, but you can see it's here. Again, not a huge point, but it's just him. Some of these seem boring. It's like, well, who cares? What's really the point of that? But he's just trying to say, look, I sourced all of my information. 26. In fall of 2018, Ukrainian prosecutors using a third party hired an American lawyer, former U.S. attorney, to proffer information to the U.S. government about certain activities at the U.S. Embassy involving Burisma and involving the 2016 election that they believe violated the U.S. law. You could read their account here. You can also confirm it independently by talking to the U.S. Attorney's Office in Manhattan or the American lawyer representing the U.S. prosecutor's interest. I've gone through this article way back when it came out. Konstantin Kulik, the deputy head of the Prosecutor General's International Legal Cooperation Department, told me he and other senior law enforcement officials tried unsuccessfully last year to get visas from the U.S. Embassy in Kiev. We were supposed to share this information on a working trip to the United States. However, the U.S. ambassador blocked us from obtaining a visa. She didn't explicitly deny our visa, but she didn't give it to us. One of the focus of their investigation has been money-spirited unlawfully out of Ukraine and moved to the United States by businessmen friendly to Yanukovych. Ukrainian businessmen authorized payments for lobbying efforts. In another incident, he said Ukrainian authorities gathered evidence that money paid to an American Democrat allegedly was hidden by Ukraine's National Anti-Corruption Bureau. Now, this is the first thing that I could honestly say I can't see the independent verification of these claims. I can see that he's saying this is what these people said to me. But he is saying that you would have to contact the U.S. State's Attorney Office in Manhattan, which is beyond my means, or the American lawyer representing U.S. Ukrainian prosecutor interests. So I can't independently verify that this is true, because I would have to take those steps. But at least he's saying, look, you could reach out to these people and get the truth. But even still, if we're being as generous as possible, I could leave fact 26 out. Now, it's important because it shows. Why would Trump be talking to Zelensky about this? Well, because he's hearing. The Ukrainians since 2018 have been trying to get information to the Trump administration, showing possible crimes that were committed by the previous administration. But people at the State Department, who was the ambassador? Yanukovych. She wouldn't give them visas to come over and do it. People at the New York Attorney General office, they wouldn't take the information. Fact 27. In May 2016, one of George Soros' top aides secured a meeting with top Eurasia policy official in State Department to discuss Russian bond issues. Read about it here. Whew. A lot of this is redacted, but you can see it's there. In June 2016, Soros himself secured a telephonic meeting with the Assistant Secretary of State, Victoria Nuland, by the way, who was cited on that email, to discuss Ukrainian policy. You can read the state's memos on that here. That's kind of an aside at the end. Nuland is available for a call with Messrs. Soros and Brzezinski at 13:30 or 1400 or 14:30 to 1500 tomorrow, June 1st. Would that work on your side? Soros is asking if Nuland will be available for a telephone call. The reason for the suggested time frame is that Brzezinski, executive director of Mr. Soros' Ukrainian Foundation, is in New York for the next 48 hours. Now, why is this important? Because it turns out, and Glenn Beck does an excellent video on this, you should be looking at, that all of this is connected to Soros. Now, I know people say, oh, that's just, everyone says Soros and it's a big conspiracy. But in this case, we have direct evidence to this being true. Soros is funding Anti-Corruption Action Center in the Ukraine. As the documents have showed, that's his point organization. He's using that to spread his message. He's working in tangent with the Obama administration. Why is Obama and our tax dollars going to fund agencies that are the point group for Soros? Why is our State Department and people like Nuland talking with people at the United States State Department about Ukrainian policy? Now, who was Soros backing in the election? Oh, that's right, Hillary Clinton. He's a globalist. He's against the interest of Donald Trump. So Soros is backing people that are connected to the Democrat establishment, people like Obama, people like Hillary Clinton. He's funding groups. He's also getting funding for his groups from the Obama administration. He's meeting with officials in the Obama administration. He has the Obama administration, their State Department, pressuring Ukrainian prosecutors to not look into the George Soros group. Let's finish it up. Look, he says, Lieutenant Colonel Vindman, if you have information that contradicts any of these 28 factual elements in my columns, I ask you make it publicly available. Your testimony did not. If you don't have evidence these 28 facts are wrong, I ask that you correct your testimony, because any effort to call factually accurate reporting false only misleads America and chills the free debate our constitutional framers so cherish to protect. What does all this mean? One, as I've said before, if there was a reason to investigate Burisma, 2016 election interference, and the Bidens, there is no case to impeach Trump. Period. Now, the Democrats will lie. They'll gnash their teeth. The media will lie. They'll say, even if that's the case, even if that was the case, there's still a quid pro quo, and a quid pro quo should be illegal. But they're lying, because they've all defended Biden's quid pro quo, every single one of them. They said, oh, no, that's different. That was an official action. That was to out corruption. So it was okay. It was okay that they withheld. See, the problem with Trump, because you'll say, well, Trump sets the policy. Trump does foreign policy. So if he thinks a group's corrupt and he says, I don't want to give him aid, then fine, that's the way it is. Oh no, Congress approved that aid, so lawfully he had to give it. He couldn't hold it back. Okay, then what about Biden? Well, with Biden, it was different. I mean, everybody agreed. Everybody in the international community agreed that Shokin was corrupt and needed to go. So number one, it shows there's no case for impeachment. Number two, it shows, just like my video this morning did, when everyone said, what have we heard for you? Oh, the intel community said, the intel community said, the intel community said, intel community said. They all agree. They all agree. They all agree. You can't question the intel community. If you ask them to cooperate with transparency, that's hurting sources of method and jeopardizing lives. If you question the intel community, that's jeopardizing America. That's creating division in America. If they said we needed to investigate Trump, we had to. The intel community all agreed. 17 of them agreed. We have to trust them. We have to take them, even when they're found to be violating policy, like Comey was, even when they're criminally referred, like Comey was, even when the IG says that the head one, like Peter Strzok, had extreme bias that may have affected his decision to prioritize the Russia investigation over the Hillary email one. After all that, doesn't matter. Got to take them at their word. Got to take the intel community at their word. Now we find out that one member of the intel community was falsifying information to spy on a Trump campaign official. Well, that was just a bad egg. Maybe we shouldn't just believe. Maybe the argument, everybody agrees, isn't an argument. Prove your case. Just like the argument, everything you say is wrong, isn't an argument. Just like the argument, I'm not going to listen to you because you're biased or you're an opinion journalist, isn't an argument. Everybody at State Department agreed. Everybody at the IMF agreed. Guess what? It's not our president's job to listen to the rest of the world. Our president is supposed to be looking out for his citizens. Maybe the people at the IMF and the EU that's always cited, they wanted Shokin gone too. Maybe they didn't have the U.S. best interests at heart. Maybe they didn't have Ukraine's best interests at heart. I don't know. I don't care. What they said is irrelevant to the law in our country. You don't get to do something possibly corrupt and say, oh, it's cool, it's not corrupt because other countries said it's cool. That's not the way it works. And besides, what did everybody say here? What have I been hearing all impeachment testimony? over and over, both from the witnesses and the Democrats, the media people, and people I've been interacting with. What did I constantly hear over and over again? All the State Department officials agree that Solomon's full of it. It's all conspiracy theory. Giuliani, it's all conspiracy. Litsenko, he's just corrupt. They're all corrupt conspiracy theorists, all of them. Everything's been debunked. It's all been debunked. It's all debunked. There was no... Litsenko's lying. No one ever told him not to investigate certain people. That's a lie. Everybody says it. Everybody says it was a lie. Everybody says that Biden didn't do anything wrong. He's a great guy. Everybody admits he didn't do anything wrong. Well, now it turns out, when we actually look at the evidence, if that's what everybody says, then everybody was wrong. By the way, as I made in a previous video, everybody said that we shouldn't give... Right? They defended Biden and Obama's decision to withhold aid in 2016. Why? They said you don't want to give money to a corrupt administration. That's what they said, right? That's why everyone defends Biden's quid pro quo. Because, you're outing corruption. You don't want to give money. Because you say, well, wait a minute. You said by withholding aid, Trump risked the lives of Ukrainians. So wouldn't Biden have risked the lives of Ukrainians by withholding aid? Oh, no, that's different. Because it's important to make sure they're not corrupt when they're getting the money. Okay. Well, now we know. Based on, they all said, everybody admits Zelensky's a good egg, right? That's what they all said. Okay. Now we know. Zelensky and all of his people said, guess what? The previous administration that Obama was working with and giving money, they were corrupt. Whoops. Everybody was wrong. All the State Department said, go ahead, they're good, give them the money. Now they all admit, okay, we were wrong. But everybody said it. You heard them say over and over, did anybody at the State Department disapprove of aid that was going to them since you were there in 2016? Oh, no. In fact, we wanted Obama to send javelins. It was pretty much unanimous at the State Department that we wanted these weapons to go. That's what they testified to. Then, when they're talking about Zelensky, they're saying, we told Trump that Ukrainian corruption was endemic. And that Zelensky was finally a good egg. And that he was... what did Volker say? He's like, I personally told him, I understand that Poroshenko's administration was corrupt, but don't prosecute the corrupt people in Poroshenko's regime because it'll cause division in your country. That's what they admitted. So everybody was wrong. When they said Poroshenko wasn't corrupt, it turns out he was. Oops, sorry. But now, believe us when we say... We all say that Litsenko is corrupt. We all say that we don't have to investigate any of this. It's garbage. It's terrible. John Solomon proves, with evidence, his claims. Thanks, Hugh, for following. Thank you, everyone. Sorry I haven't been reading many comments because I'm not that I'm running the show by myself, so I got to bounce back window to window, so it's tough for me to do that sometimes. So that's the second thing we're on. One, no case for impeachment because Trump was right to pursue these investigations. Second, this argument that, we just have to listen to everyone. Guess what? They were all wrong. By the way, I said this. I said, okay, if their testimony is everybody at state, they all unanimously thought Litsenko was lying, Solomon's lying. It's all been debunked. And therefore, the Democrats could write it off and say it's all been debunked. Therefore, Trump should be impeached. There's no reason to investigate this. God forbid we ever find out they're wrong. Because if we find out they're wrong, then what's the implications of that? If they're wrong about this, why should we believe them in anything else they testified to? Because remember, not one person personally heard Trump say, I want a quid pro quo. To the opposite, the only person that talked directly to to Trump that testified was Sondland. Sondland claims Trump specifically said, no quid pro quo. I want nothing. I want Zelensky to do what he was elected to do, which was fight corruption. But the reason we have to believe there's a quid pro quo is why? Because they're presumption. What did you hear people like Sondland saying? Everybody knew that aid was a condition. Everybody knew it. It wasn't a secret. We all presumed. No one told us, but we all presumed. Well, if you're all wrong under your presumption that John Solomon is incorrect about everything, that there was no Ukrainian election interference, that there was nothing shady or worth investigating under the Biden situation, if you are all wrong about those presumptions, why in God's name should we believe your presumptions about a quid pro quo? Yes, humongous, that's a fantastic point. All of these people are supposedly Ukrainian experts, right? They don't know the bare minimum of things. Like, they kind of know Burisma's corrupt. They know that. They don't know crap about how much Hunter Biden was getting paid. They don't know crap about what Joe Biden was exactly doing over there. Nothing. None of these facts that I just went through, the first 10. They didn't know that Shokin took Zlochevsky's property. They didn't know that lawyers for Burisma had talked specifically to the interim prosecutor and said that Joe Biden and U.S. officials were wrong to say the previous guy was corrupt. They didn't know that Shokin testified that he was forced out by Poroshenko. They didn't know that the investigation was eventually buried. They didn't know anything. Just like Obama, right? Obama never, he always says, oh, I didn't know until I read it in the paper. Now, they knew every single thing Trump said, right? When they said, oh, I can't believe Trump said this in the paper. Oh, I can't believe Giuliani said this. They knew all those reports, but they didn't know the public reports. And these are experts on the Ukraine. They had no idea about Ukrainian election interference. No clue. None. They didn't know about Sitnik at the end of the NEBU. They didn't know that a Ukrainian court found them guilty of interfering. Or the ones that did, like Fiona Hill, she just said, sure, I knew about it. I didn't think it was a big deal. So George Kent, they both said that. Yeah, I didn't mind that. We're concerned about, the voters don't care about election interference, but Russia? Those are experts in Ukraine, right? Now, I knew all that stuff. You know what my expertise is? I could shotgun a beer pretty fast. I am a average to maybe slightly below average PlayStation player. Let's see, what other expertise would I have? I'm a pretty good talker and debater. I'll give myself that. When it comes to Ukraine, I could barely point to it on a map, and I've read news stories about it. I've never been to the Ukraine. I have met one guy from the Ukraine, believe it or not, but he was an exchange student. I couldn't tell you anything about the geography of Ukraine. I can't speak the language of the Ukraine. I've never met any official that was officially working in any capacity with the Ukrainian government. I've never met any official in an official capacity that was working as a diplomat to the Ukraine from the United States. Nothing. I have about as little Ukrainian expertise as a human being could possibly have, I'd go so far as to say. Yet somehow, a novice, a fat guy sitting on a chair like me, who likes to do videos because I'm concerned about this country and what's going on, I don't have any access to any information more than the average person. I got Google, I got a computer, I have an interest, and I have an ability to talk. That's it. I don't know anything special about the Ukraine or have any access to how to get any information further than what the regular person can. And somehow, my knowledge of this Ukraine situation blows every single one of the experts out of the water. Now, there's only two explanations for that. Incompetence of the highest degree. That we are appointing people as experts on these countries that don't know bare minimum facts that some chubby guy in a chair in rural Pennsylvania knows. That's explanation one. I don't believe that. Explanation two, they're corrupt. They know. And you know why I believe that? Because we have George Kent's testimony. George Kent admits, I know what Sitnik was accused of, and yes, I did tell Litsenko. Drop the investigation or it'll jeopardize our cooperation. That's the truth. They all knew. They're going to feign stupidity now, but they knew. And the fact that they were intentionally telling the Ukraine to drop prosecutorial decisions into election interference that helped Hillary, that might start to explain why they didn't want Donald Trump to investigate, wouldn't it? Because let's say Donald Trump does talk to Zelensky, and Zelensky, let's say it's true, right? Now, this isn't Solomon's point, this is my point. But I think this sounds intuitively true. Now, we've heard testimony from Volker that Zelensky's the real deal, and he's there to fight corruption, right? And that's why he was elected. The people wanted to end the corruption. Now, I don't know squat about the Ukrainian people, but generally my belief on people is we're all similar in most things. My guess is most people in almost every country in the world, they want their government to look out for their interest. Not to look out for the country 2,000 miles away's interest, but their own interest, right? And so I've talked about this before. This is my best guess. And I think if someone wants to challenge me on this, fair enough. I'd love to have debate it out. But here's just intuitively what I gather is probably going on in the Ukraine. We know that it was a Soviet Union state, and we know that it's been kind of involved in this pushing and pulling between a proxy kind of diplomatic war between Russia and the United States and the West, right? Okay, so I'll take it face value. Yanukovych in 2014, he's a pro-Putin president. Fine, we'll say that. And then there was a revolution and Poroshenko comes in, which, by the way, you know the United States had something to do with. But regardless, neither here nor there. And then we get Poroshenko, who's working with Obama. He's anti-Putin. He's going to arrest all the pro-Putin oligarchs, and he's working with the United States and the West now, right? Okay? And Obama and all them, this is great. They called it the revolution of dignity. Finally, the corrupt Yanukovych regime is out. Finally, a non-corrupt regime. The Ukrainian people, 75% of them voted for Zelensky. Do you know what Zelensky's job was? He was a stand-up comic. He was basically like a Jon Stewart type character. Played the president on TV, made fun of the president all the time. A comedian with no political experience. You know what he ran on? He was a single issue candidate. You know what he ran on? Ending corruption. He gets 75% of the vote. Now that intuitively leads me to believe there's a country whose people are like, I'm so sick and tired of having a president that's concerned about Russia. I'm so sick and tired of having a president that's concerned about the United States. You know what I want? A president that's concerned about the Ukraine. That's what I want. Tired of being puppets. I don't want my government and my elected leaders to be puppets of other countries. By the way, that's how I feel in the United States. I'm tired of this garbage globalist regime. I'm tired of the idea of people saying, well, Obama was much more well-respected around the world and the rest of the world liked Obama. Yeah, that's probably a bad thing because Obama was giving away our resources and he was being open borders and he wasn't nationalist. That's what I want. And I don't mean nationalist in a bad way. I mean that as a patriot that cares about this country and enacts policies that favor this country first. Now, I'm also an anti-aggression principle. I'm against all these foreign wars. I don't think we should intentionally be out there doing harm. I think it's corrupt for us to steal resources from other countries. I'm not advocating us behave immorally, but I want my government to be concerned about me and the other citizens. And by the way, I don't care what your skin color is, or your religion, or your sexual preference. None of that, or your country of origin. If you are a U.S. citizen, I want our government to be working for you, period. That's it. Not the EU, not the Ukraine. That's probably how the people of the Ukraine feel. So they elected this guy, right? Anti-corruption guy. Now picture, what if this anti-corruption guy had talked to Trump and said, because just picture how he's feeling. He ran, clearly he was PO'd about the Poroshenko administration. I mean, you're not going to run as a stand-up comic and get as an anti-corruption candidate and get 75% of the vote unless you're saying the current government in here is corrupt. Not, that government 3 governments ago was corrupt, but this one's pretty cool, but still I'll run on anti-corruption. That's not going to fly. So clearly he's upset about the corruption under Poroshenko. So he gets in there. All of a sudden you start hearing what's been admitted by George Kent. So wait, you mean to tell me that the Obama administration is sending us a bunch of money in the Ukraine, but at the same time their State Department's like, hey, we gave you that money, I noticed that you're investigating some people, Ukrainian citizens. Yeah, we think that they've done shady things, such as, funneling money unlawfully, getting money from outside sources unlawfully, intervening in other countries' elections unlawfully, releasing classified investigation evidence unlawfully. So yeah, we're investigating those people. Why? Well, see, here's the thing. We like those people in the United States. The Obama administration likes those people. So we're going to have to strongly suggest you drop those investigations. Elsewise, maybe our cooperation, it'll jeopardize that cooperation. And Poroshenko says, oh, okay. What do you think what do you think Zelensky thinks when he comes in? So wait a minute. We've basically been the U.S.'s bitch? Sorry, I don't swear that often, but I couldn't think of a better word. We've been being bullied around. They've been saying, oh, you took our money. Now you better listen to us. Nah, I'm done with that, says Zelensky. I don't want any part of that. Screw that. We're our own country. Sure, we would like aid from the United States, but we don't want you bullying us around. We're tired, because that's how corruption starts, and everybody knows that's how it starts. Hey, we're giving you a bunch of money. Thank you. Why don't you let this person off the hook? Okay. You know what? Maybe there's a little something for you in there, too. Oh, okay. Now, all of a sudden, Zelensky, who ran on, I'm tired of these corrupt officials. I'm tired of corrupt prosecutors. I'm tired of these corrupt oligarchs. We're going to bring them to justice. Now he finds, and I just did a video on this morning, about the Time magazine article. Go check it out. What are Ukrainian prosecutors? They're all called good eggs, but everybody agrees. All the State Department people agree. The Democrats all agree. Zelensky's the real deal. He's fighting corruption. He surrounded himself with good prosecutors. What are these prosecutors saying in that Time article? Well, we're having trouble investigating Burisma, and the reason is 2 things. One is because Hunter Biden was on the board of directors, and that's still affecting our ability to investigate it. And second is because the Democrats' impeachment efforts means that if we do anything, we'll be accused of trying to benefit Donald Trump. So now we can't investigate Burisma. And it's very important to our country to investigate Burisma, they're saying. Not because it would help Trump, not because it would hurt Biden, but because they were corrupt and they stole millions of dollars from our taxpayers. Right? That was their take. That's what they say in that Time magazine article. But now we have the Democrats saying, how dare Trump? How dare he push Zelensky for this investigation? Remember, Zelensky had no idea the aid had been withheld when he's on the phone with Trump. Trump says, I'd like you to investigate this stuff. He says, absolutely. Yes, of course. I just want to let you know, Mr. President, I'm putting my own people in, and we're going to get to the bottom of this corruption. No, yeah, he doesn't step back and say, well, you said Hunter Biden. I don't know if I'm going to investigate Hunter Biden. He just says, Trump, what I'm hearing from you, Trump, is I want you to investigate allegations of corruption. I assure you, no matter where they lead, we're going to investigate. They weren't pressured. They didn't think there was aid in the line. Now, because of the Democrats, they can't investigate. The last line of that Times Magazine article is from an official in the prosecutorial office in Zelensky's administration saying, it looks like we're not going to be able to do anything on Zlochevsky or Burisma until after the U.S. election. Why? Why do you think that? Why would they say that? Well, let's say they start investigating and then Trump loses. What do you think's going to happen with the new administration that comes in, the Democratic administration? Oh, Zelensky, you decided to go after former Democrats, huh? Maybe you didn't know this. Did you watch those impeachment hearings? We control the entire media. We're going to make you look like a fool. We're going to say you're corrupt. You ain't getting shit. See ya. So they're just like, dude, we just want to investigate. All we want is a country where we can investigate our own crimes. But here we have the State Department, the very people testifying against Trump. We're telling us for years, hey, don't investigate this person. Hey, do investigate this person. You can't investigate this person connected to Soros. They're tired of it. What's the last thing we learned? So one, we learned the case for impeaching Trump is nonsense because the evidence that John Solomon's been talking about proves that there should be an investigation into Burisma. There should be an investigation into Ukrainian 2016 election interference, connections with people like Alexandra Chalupa. There should be an investigation into prosecutors at the State Department, officials at the State Department telling Ukrainian prosecutors to drop investigations into election interference and into Obama allies. Number two, what have we learned? The idea that just because everyone in State Department says something or just because everyone in the intel community says something is garbage. And along with that, kind of number three, we've learned no one has refuted John Solomon's reporting at all. Period. All they've done is personally attack him, call him an opinion piece writer, say that it's all hearsay, say that he doesn't have any evidence to back up his facts, say that he's biased and corrupt, say that the people he's talked to are corrupt and shouldn't be listened to. They don't even look at his specific claims. I posted this article like an hour before I came on here to Above Top Secret. I'm talking to people about it. And they're just like, oh, so what? He talked to some corrupt guy named Lysenko and now we're supposed to believe Lysenko over Hill and Vindman? Yeah, I think not. No, that's not what happened. He talked to Lysenko and he talked to Yovanovitch. He got both sides of the story and then he went out and did research and he talked to another person in the State Department. And that person, who's unnamed, admittedly, says, yeah, actually, we did pressure people. And then he found a letter from George Kent, that George Kent admitting to signing, that said, yeah, that Soros Anti-Corruption Action Center, yeah, we did pressure them to stop the investigation of them. Then he read George Kent's testimony, where George Kent said, yeah, the people that were accused of election interference from Ukraine, yeah, we did pressure to stop investigations into them. So no, it's not Lysenko's word versus Yovanovitch's word. It's actual testimony, not from pro-Trump people, not from people in the Trump orbit, from the very witnesses against Trump. And I post this and people say, it's all garbage, orange man bad, Trump's a terrible person, quid pro quo. You're just trying to deflect from Trump being terrible. That's all this is. And we know Solomon's a hack. We know he's just a hack. He doesn't have any facts. It's just his opinions. He's an opinion article writer. He's just an opinion columnist. So this is all just opinion. So it's all garbage. I don't even read opinion stuff. I don't even read it. This is garbage. You're just trying to deflect. Hill said this was all garbage. So it's all garbage. I've debunked everything you said. I debunked it. These are people that honestly think that saying, okay, here's a list of 28 things that I think warrant investigation. I have 2 or 3 sources to back up every single one of these 28 things. Most of those sources aren't even just the people that are involved, but it's actual State Department memos, testimony from people under oath, official state documents from the U.S. or the Ukraine, right? And your answer to that's like, okay, we'll get started here. 28 points. I'd like to group together points 1 through 28. You're a poo-poo head and this is all wrong. Thank you. Did it. Woo! I debunked him. Yes, I did it. That's it. Oh, you're still talking about the poo-poo head? Don't you remember when I debunked it last time we talked? It's all debunked. It's debunked. Dude, you're delusional. You're delusional. You refuse to look at the crimes of Trump. You're delusional, dude. We've debunked everything you talk about. Everybody agree. Here's 3-4 people who agree with me. It's debunked. I heard the State Department people say they all agree that it's been debunked, so it's debunked. But what about this specific thing? Yeah, I'm not going to take time to go specifically through this corrupt opinion columnist and his just non-evidenced opinions. I'm not going to go through it, every single one. Okay, then how about you go through one? Just show me one that's wrong. Yeah. No, I'm not going to do that. It's just corrupt. It's been debunked, dude. You're just trying to change the subject. Now, it's bad enough I hear that from people online or people that I'm talking to. But when that's the argument of the freaking people testifying against Trump in the impeachment hearings, the experts at State Department, are you kidding me? The media, by the way, if Donald Trump says mean words about Jim Acosta, they throw a fit. How dare you? The media has to stick together, and this is terrible. Oh, my goodness. They have no problem totally attacking John Solomon. Has anyone? I've read some of the articles against John Solomon. Like, someone gave me this BuzzFeed article, right? And it was debunking the Politico story about Alexandra Chalupa. I've read 2 articles debunking that story. Because remember, the Chalupa story was from a Politico 2017 article. Now, this Politico article, and you hear people cite this all the time, they cited it in the impeachment. It was written by Ken Vogel, who now works at the New York Times. Big left-wing writers, right? Now, it does 2 things. First, it further expounds upon the Financial Times August 2016 article. That article is an admission from Sergei Leshchenko that they released the Black Ledger with people working in the Anti-Corruption Bureau because they hate Donald Trump and they want him to lose and they're interfering to help Hillary. And that he's working, the majority of the politicians in the Ukraine are on his side and they won't stop. That's an admission. That's 2 months before the election, admitting that to a mainstream media outlet in the United States. Then a year later, Politico writes an article and it says, Ukraine, the title's something like, Ukraine interference into election backfires. It further expands upon Leshchenko admitting to releasing the Black Ledger. It goes on to say, actually, now there's a lot of questions as if that Black Ledger was even real evidence or if it was forged. And that's actually a great question because Mueller, who convicted Manafort, did not use one piece of evidence from that Black Ledger. So people want to say, well, that interference was okay because Manafort's guilty and that was just Leshchenko releasing verified evidence. No, it wasn't. And even if it was, it wouldn't matter. It's okay to interfere in the election as long as what you're saying is true. Well, in that case, all the WikiLeaks stuff, no one denies all that was true. Those were real emails. Yet still they said that was election interference. The other thing the Politico article says is it goes step by step through Alexandra Chalupa and some of the stuff we talked about here, right? She's admitting, meeting with people in the Ukraine. She's trying to get evidence on Manafort. She admits something big's come down the pipe. She talked to Leshchenko and them. That's exactly what the Democrats accused Trump of doing for 3 years. That Mueller had to investigate for 2 years and came to the conclusion no one in Trump's orbit did that. Now, full disclosure, my claim the entire time has been, I don't care if Trump or Hillary people did that. If you want to send people to get dirt from foreign sources, I'm totally fine with that. I don't think what Hillary did, getting the Steele dossier, which was sourced by Kremlin officials, I don't think that was illegal. Now, there's 2 exceptions. If you're getting dirt from foreign officials and you're promising them like official state action in return, so you would promise, for example, hey, if you make up some stuff about Hillary, then we'll lift sanctions. That'd be one thing. That's not a good thing. But just saying, do you got any dirt on Hillary? Or if they say, hey, we got dirt, and you say, sure, we'll hear it. It's not a problem. Not a problem for Hillary to pay Christopher Steele to get dirt. Not a problem. But that's not what everyone said. They said that's election interference. That needs investigating. Okay, pony up. Mueller investigated, and it turned out there wasn't one person in Trump's orbit that sought out Russians to get dirt in their opponent. Not one, period. After 3 years, couldn't get one person. Now we have evidence, admissions from emails that that's exactly what Chalupa was doing. DNC operative. And all of a sudden, no one seems to care. The Political article said all this. You know what the response I've seen 2 articles that responded to it. One was a BuzzFeed article, and it said, Chile, I think it was Chile, the Ukrainian embassy official that admitted to talking Chalupa. Well, we can't believe them. You know why we can't believe them? You know, literally, this is what this BuzzFeed article said. It was like a 5-page article that was making one point, and that point was as follows. That embassy official that released the official document, an official Ukrainian document from the official Ukrainian embassy, the person that wrote that document, yeah, he talked to Fox News, too. He talked to Rudy Giuliani. So, that's it. That person must be lying. He talked to Russia Today. So what? Imagine how ridiculous that would sound on the other end of things. Trump's accused of something. I'm like, okay, but the official government, the British document from the actual MI6 office, right, that actually outlines specifically in a court document what Trump did wrong. Yeah, the person that wrote that talked to CNN, so no. Sorry, it must be a lie. We can't believe anything that person says. They talked to CNN. I mean, so stupid. That was the first. The second wasn't even an article. It was an interview with the guy at Politico with Ken Vogel that wrote the article. And you know what his big defense was? He was like, we stand by everything we said in the article. But we don't think it was as bad as Russian interference. Oh, case closed then. That's not an answer. You can't say only this one type of interference needs to be investigated. If foreign interference needs to be investigated, then it needs to be investigated. If it's illegal for you to send someone in your party to a foreign country trying to get dirt in your opponent, then it's illegal, period. You don't say, well, unless it's the Ukraine because they're not as powerful as Russia. Ridiculous. That's not debunking anything. It's the same crap over and over again. Now, I did a video a long time ago where Jim Jordan did an interview. This may be a month and a half ago. Jim Jordan does an interview with Jake Tapper. And Jordan starts talking about Biden, and Tapper gets incessant. I'm not going to let you sit here and spew out debunked points. Biden did nothing wrong. It's been debunked. By who, Jake? Who debunked it? What's been debunked? That's all they do. They just say everything's debunked. Everything's debunked. Oh, Fox News, debunked. Oh, Fox sucks, by the way. I don't care. It's just ridiculous. That's all they do. That's all they've done with Sullivan. I challenge anyone. And look, for those of you that might be new to watching me, this might sound unreasonable. One, I'm actually a very happy person. I get fired up about this. It's like blowing off steam. I feel so good after I rant and rave on one of these. When I ran for Congress, I wasn't ranting and raving like this. And when I debated, I was one of the better debaters in the country. I'm pretty calm when I was debating. I get fired up, but I'm pretty calm. But I'm a very happy person. The only reason I bring this up is I am actively looking for people to come on the channel with me and debate me. Preferably people that disagree with me. And you could see, if you go back through my litany of videos, right? I've personally had people, friends of mine, a lot of my friends I met through college hate Trump. I'm still great friends with them. When I ran for Congress, that's one of the things my points was. We need to learn it's okay to have political disagreements with people. You can still be friends with them. To me, it's the same as I'm a Pittsburgh Pirates fan. If some of my friends are St. Louis Cardinals fan, we rib each other during the game. That's fine. We're still friends. If it gets too heated, we just stop talking about baseball. Same with politics, right? But when I do have conversations with them, I'm not a jerk about it. I give them their fair say. We try to find agreements where we can, and we have a polite, fun conversation. I've done that both with people I know in real life. I'll give you a story. There's a person, he goes by the name of Basic Thoughts. One night, it's like 4 a.m. I'm arguing with this person on Twitter about, it was the dumbest argument. Elizabeth Warren puts out like a little graph. It's like, here's how black people compare to white people financially. And it's a little graph. And then my point was like, but why did you leave off Asian people? Because white people actually do worse than Asian. Why didn't you compare black people to Asian people? Well, that doesn't fit your narrative, does it? And this person was like, nah, you're stupid. And we went back and forth all night. And then just on a whim, after arguing until 4 a.m. on Twitter, I say, hey, you want to come on my channel and talk about it? He says, sure. Now we're good friends. We've done like 13, 14 hours worth of videos together. There are people I have discussions with that aren't on my level as far as debate skill or my knowledge of the certain issue. That's fine. I'm not going to treat them like crap. I listen to all opinions. I really will. But I'm trying my best. I am trying so hard to get someone on that disagrees with me. I can't find it. I can't find anyone. Whether it be on my videos, whether it be on websites that I'm talking on, I can't find anyone that looks at these points, like the stuff Solomon's talking about, and says, okay, all right, I hear what he's saying, but what about X? And be like, oh, fair enough. That's a good point. Let's debate that. It's literally just, the guy's a hack. Everything he says is wrong. Or it doesn't matter if everything he says is true. We need to impeach Trump. Trump's terrible. That's it. That's the only type of interaction I could get on this. And that's not unique to just people I talk to. That's what I see from the mainstream media. That's what I see from the Democrats. That's what I see from their witnesses. No one talks specifics. You tell me something specifically you have against Trump. I support Trump. I'll listen to you. You might even convince me. But somehow in this situation, it's like, oh my God, how can you, like you talk about division, how can you have a serious conversation with people when literally their point is just, go ahead, Rob, you could talk for 2 hours. You could cite whatever you want. The best evidence in the world. You could cite an admission. You could cite an admission from Joe Biden. You know, a conversation we have of him that comes out where he's like, yeah, I was worried they were going to lock up my son, so, you know, I pressured them using money to stop the investigation into my son. I could have all that and present it, and they would be like, that was very compelling, 2 hours of testimony, 2 hours of evidence making your point. Allow me to respond. Everything you said was wrong. Yeah! Woo! I've tried to debate Destiny. He won't get in touch with me. Which I don't blame him, by the way. Destiny, for those of you who don't know, he's kind of, I'd say it's fair to characterize him as left-wing, but he was like a gamer who's actually a pretty good debater. The problem is, it's not Destiny won't debate me because he's afraid of me. It's not that. Destiny won't debate me because I got 4 people watching my videos. And you take a huge risk, someone who's a basic unknown, having them come on your channel. Who knows what I'll say, right? Would be his point of view. So if you know Destiny, or if you have a way to get, I've emailed him and done things like that. Also David Pacman, I've tried to get in touch with him. No go. I talked to him about this or any other issue they wanted, but it just doesn't, they don't want to hear from me, because I don't have a big enough audience. So I'm trying my best to grow my audience. I try to talk to people in real life and on here, because just real quick, for those of you that might not know me, I live in rural Pennsylvania. I ran for Congress. I'm kind of a nerd. Everybody in my life, my loved ones, my friends, my family, they all work with their hands. I don't know anyone who is a person who's even middle class. We're all poor or lower middle class. Every one of us. I live in a small town. Like, the biggest job in the little town that I've grown up basically in my whole life, Clarion, was a glass plant. It went out. Basically 1/3 of the people in town lost their jobs. Like, everybody's broke around here, but it's cool. They're great people. I respect these people. And I'm sick and tired of no one sticking up for them. I'd feel the same way if I lived in the inner city and I saw all these poor inner city people that are basically getting made all these promises and told they're victims, but no one's ever looking out for them. I'd feel the same way. These are the people I know. I'm tired of seeing them getting treated like crap. So I ran for Congress. The special election. I made it to the top 10 out of 24 people, which is good. I got to speak at the convention. All I told the people at the convention was, look, I know I'm not going to win. That's fine. I'm an unknown. But I just want to let you know that we're not all stupid. That there are people like me out there that aren't impressed by the fancy limos, that don't want to be in Washington, that don't even really care about the money. We care about the country, and we care about the people that we know, that are the backbone of this country, and we're tired of getting screwed over. That's it. Period. I don't care if you're Republican, if you're Democrat. We could disagree on exactly what's going on. Now, my feeling on the Democratic Party right now, at least the people running it they are working with the deep state. They are the exact problem with the country. Don't get me wrong. There are establishment Republican people I don't like. I align more with the Republican Party. That's all I'm trying to say. But I still could respect my friends that's a Democrat. That's fine. I think I make pretty compelling cases. I can't get a foot in the door anywhere. I'm basically told, hey, you did great. Hand out signs. You know? I'll make these points. Like, I thought that I am making compelling points. Like, I have not heard one person other than John Solomon and me. Look, it's an easy... You have to remember who your audience is. Most people aren't watching these impeachment things like me or you. Most people aren't on a Friday at 4:15 watching some chubby guy yell about politics on a chair. That's just not happening, right? Those are your audience. Those are the people that are going to vote. So then you have to explain this to them. Arguing about exactly who this whistleblower is or was there a quid pro quo, that's fine. Those are reasonable arguments. But that's hard to wrap your head around. Here's something that's real easy. Hey, Biden, he was vice president and his son's company was being looked at, and he used $1 billion of your tax dollars to force the guy looking at his son's company to get fired. Do you think that should be looked at? Yep. Okay, simple. That's what Trump was trying to do. They're actually trying to make it illegal to investigate corruption from the Democrats. That's what this whole thing's about. Oh, by the way, the State Department people you see testifying against Trump, you know how they told you for 3 years that foreign election interference was like the biggest deal in the world? Oh yeah, I remember. I was like, I don't really care. I just am concerned about my job and stuff. But yeah, I agree. We didn't care around here. We didn't care in rural Pennsylvania. But they kept telling you Russia, because they interfered in our election, right? Yeah, I remember. And you remember that 3-year investigation? Yep, I remember. Okay, what if I told you that Ukraine interfered in the election to the point where a Ukrainian court found people guilty of that? And people that were allied with Obama actually again threatened your tax dollars to them to drop the investigation into that election interference. So the very people that told you they needed to investigate Trump for 3 years for foreign election interference themselves were not only engaged in foreign election interference, but were burying investigations into it. How does that make you feel? That's what Trump was trying to investigate. That's way easier to understand than quid pro quo. Who's Eric Charmella? Who's the whistleblower? What's the laws on whistleblowers? What do you mean they changed it? What do you, hearsay? What are you talking about? You tell me if you heard one other person in the country. John Solomon. If you got a link to his Discord or something, I would love to try to debate him. I think it would be great. I don't know how to get on his Discord. I've sent him emails and I've sent messages on his YouTube channel, and then a buddy of mine that follows him has also sent him emails, and I haven't heard back. So if you have a link to that, I would be glad to try to get in touch with him. But anyways, I'll just finish up here. My point's just, I don't see people making this point. I go to Twitter and I see no one's making the point. It's like, dude, George Kent admitted that he pressured the guy who was found guilty of interfering in the 2016 election. I'll look up his Discord tonight. I will, Hugh. I don't see people making that point. I don't see anyone talking about this Time Magazine article. Check out my video on this. What's the big deal with the Time Magazine article? It is an admission from the new government in Ukraine that everybody admits is anti-corruption. They're the real deal. Admitting the fact that Hunter Biden was on the board of directors has really tied our hands when it comes to investigating Burisma. And now the Democrats' debate our impeachment efforts is also tying our hands. That's a huge deal, because what's the Democrat narrative? What were the witnesses' narratives? What did they say the whole time? They said, when Trump made this request or this demand, then that put Ukraine in a difficult position because now they feel like we have to listen to Trump and blah, 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 blah. But actually, it all started with Hunter Biden being there and Joe Biden forcing to fire the prosecutor. That's when the Ukraine started to raise their eyebrows and go, uh-oh, we better walk on eggshells when it comes to investigating Burisma. And then when the impeachment efforts came up, they said, uh-oh, we better walk on eggshells again because we don't want the Democrats to think we're helping Donald Trump. But no one talks about that. No one talks about that Time Magazine article, So that's what I try to do here. I think that my specialty is I got a good eye for what the most strategic argument is. And I also have a good idea for how to explain that to normal, everyday people. Not people that are dumb or smarter than me. That's not what I'm saying. People that aren't have the same interests as me, that don't have the time to sit here and look through all this information like me. I think I have a decent ability to explain it in a way that they understand. So, yeah, I recommend, what I would recommend after this, if you could, well, I would ask if you could like and subscribe if you haven't. Please recommend me to some other people. Look forward to me putting more videos out. I'm going to try to average at least one a day. I've been really going crazy this week with a ton of like hours-long live streams. But I will have work coming up, so I won't be able to do this every day. So I might miss a day or here and there, but I'll try to put videos up on average once a day. And yeah, if you could recommend me to some other people, that'd be great. I also strongly recommend you follow the reporting of John Solomon. Not because he's agreeing with me. That's not what it is. It's because when you see someone who's attacked so bad by the people in all of his peers, that's a difficult thing. It's one thing if you're a Republican and all the Democrats are attacking you, or you're a Democrat and all the Republicans are attacking you. But when you're a journalist and all the journalists are attacking you, that's tough. That's really tough. And he stayed the course despite all of these attacks. He has not backed down. He has defended himself professionally, and he has backed up, like with this. I mean, he literally had a lieutenant colonel go in front, and amongst other witnesses, go in front of a congressional hearing and call him a liar over and over, and say he was wrong, and say he was inaccurate, and say he was a hack. Over and over. And he handled it with professionalism, and he backed up his points. And he still ignored and smeared, and he doesn't get 1/10 of the recognition he deserves. So I just recommend that you follow John Solomon. He used to be on The Hill. You could read a lot of his back articles. Just go to The Hill. In the search section, type John Solomon. You could read a lot of his articles there. But he also, his new website is John Solomon Reports. That's where I got this from today. And follow him on Twitter as well. I think that would be a good recommendation. So thank you, everyone. I have to clean the house before my wife gets home or I'll be in a lot of trouble. So I'm going to head out, let the dogs out and do that. But I really appreciate everyone. I honestly do. Even if it's only one person listening to me, I'm extremely humbled to know that there's someone out there that's willing to listen to me flap my gums for 2 hours. It means a lot to me. So I really appreciate every one of you. Thank you for the suggestion, Hugh, on trying to get in touch with Destiny. I will definitely try to do that. And thank you, everyone, again, and have a good one.